Good morning and welcome to Trinity County Board of Supervisors, October 1st. Before we move on, we will put the Pledge of Allegiance. Supervisor Taylor, will you lead us, please?
Yes. Please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, excuse me, to public comment. This time is for information from the public on matters not appearing on the agenda. All comments are limited to 3 minutes and must pertain to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. When addressing the board, please state your name for the record and address the board as a whole through the chair. No action or discussion will be conducted on matters not listed on the agenda. However, the chair may refer the subject matter to the appropriate department or for follow-up schedule the matter on a subsequent board agenda. Good morning.
Good morning, board. Diana Sheen, Weaverville. Actually live on Easter Avenue. And this is concerning a big problem that there is in that creek that goes down along Barbara and all across and next to the hospital and all along Courthouse. It is in dire need of taking all that foliage out of that creek. It is a fire hazard. That's my number one. And it is, of course, got history of the flooding continuously at the courthouse. And okay, they cleaned out some of it, but it's not cleaned out where Easter Avenue meets Garden Gulch, and it's not cleaned out all the way up Barbara. And it needs to be cleaned out totally, not just a little bit, so that I go to the hospital for blood tests, and I've seen not the hospital employees, but people who come to the emergency room, stand out by their cars, and smoke their cigarettes, and toss cigarettes into that foliage. And that is one big fire tornado, if you want to call it, waiting to happen. And it really, ASAP, needs to be, eradicated, taken out, done whatever that needs to be done. And I was just, I have the ear of RCB a little bit, but a suggestion of, but that's all I have there. But I was under the impression that Mr. Tippett, whatever hat he's wearing for this, needs possibly to make this happen. It needs to be done, and it has to be done soon. I'm sure Paradise didn't think that on November 8th that they were going to all burn up. So here we are, and I'm still beating this drum because this town, this county needs more fire safe thinking. And sure, they've done some things, but there's so much more to be done, and that is a really good place to start. The hospital is there, the courthouse is there, there's several neighborhoods right in there. The convalescent hospital is there, and it needs to be done. Thank you.
Can you follow up with I know he's done some work in the past, and with maybe another agency or two?
Yes.
And we likely will also have a presentation from the Forest Service on some of the work they're going to plan to do around Weaverville in upcoming months, but that's separate from that issue, so thank you. Good morning.
Kate Graves from Lewiston. I'm wondering where our November election is. There's candidates, positions that should have been open for this November for special districts and the school board, and as far as I know. And I'm just wondering where they got bumped along to or where they got moved. there's really been no explanation to the public. It's just we had elections in November and now we just don't. And there were a lot of positions for that. I know it was the hospital board that was the only one on the even year for November. So the bulk of them were on the odd numbered year, which would be this year. So where'd they go? Thank you.
We had this item before. State law has changed some things, and maybe a department has our elections official can speak to it a little more.
Could you turn your microphone to?
Sure.
Morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Tom Blanco, Douglas City. Not to steal the thunder of Trinity County's own old gray lady, but as everybody will likely see in the Trinity Journal tomorrow, I'm launching an initiative, one might call it in competition to an existing measure about cannabis taxation. The one I'm presenting goes a little bit further in that since we're doing it anyway, it restructures what the county odyssey has become. Basically creates CUPs for everything moving forward. It addresses the existing 2019 licenses that have been through our county CEQA process, albeit a shaky and bumpy and first time out process. It's still a process. Those would be grandfathered. Everything new would be a CUP. It retains the same zoning that the Planning Commission has come up with and this board has ratified. Retains the same size that it would allow stacking as a percentage of aggregate parcel size. Caps everything at an acre the way it currently is. Caps the licenses at 500, allows the board to increase those licenses by up to 5% every year, depending on need. And it directs, it would direct the county to enter an MOU with state licensing regulatory authorities for local enforcement of state regulations. That does two things. Gets us all on the same page of what regulations are controlling what's going on. And I guess it does three things. It allows reimbursement for enforcement action from the state cannabis fund instead of our county general fund. And it carries the penalties and the fee structure, that fine structure that comes from state law. We've kind of been using the carrot and stick approach, offering a kind of moldy, bendy carrot and, you know, one of those pool noodles as a stick. This gives us a 4-foot bamboo cane, and I will say it does put us under state law, gives us an organic, fresh from the ground carrot, allowing caregiver gardens, which would allow caregivers to grow for up to 5 patients, like state law allows. Anyway, you'll see it in the paper, and thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Hi, Andrew Franklin, Junction City, and since I came down this morning for another issue, I'd just like to express my disappointment at the lack of retail storefront cannabis sales in Trinity County. Many of our citizens use these products. Many of our citizens travel out of county to purchase these products. They want tested, researched, high-quality cannabis products. Many of these citizens are seniors, and it hurts their budget to drive to Eureka, to drive to Shasta Lake to purchase the cannabis products, either for their medicinal use or for their recreational use. And I think it's almost criminal that they can't purchase those products here in the county where they live. It's been years now that these folks have had to drive out of county. And we produce some of the finest flour and all that kind of thing, but there are a lot of high-tech, very good products on the market that our citizens want access to. And I ask you to please speed up the process to at least allow a path I mean, you can see retail is suffering all over this county. And this is a business that may actually do well here. So please work on that. Thank you.
For those who didn't know, we do have a retail ad hoc that's been working on it, so it's
Beat it up.
it's a capacity issue.
Jim Stowell, Hayport, California. Last Board of Supervisors meeting, I was informed by the Board of Supervisors that they had 1,000 parcel deal that if they didn't meet 1,000 on the point, they didn't have to send letters out to the public to tell them what this tax, the Mountain Community Health Care tax was for. And if I'm not mistaken, at the end of that statement, they stated that they had 965 parcels that they tax. And this is wrong. This is just totally outright and right wrong. You need to get in line, get John Jelisich back in line. He's the one that's informing you about these laws and regulations in the state of California. California Constitution supersedes state law. It's the supreme law of the land along with the United States Constitution. And you're violating it. I'd like to get this on the agenda to get it settled. And this is my 9th time being in here trying to get something done. I don't appreciate the lack of support. Thank you.
Richard, am I not correct, or am I correct, that you didn't get that from last meeting?
Yes, we did, and we agreed to disagree. So we-
And that's the same issue?
If I may, this is
Sure.
a different subject, it's regarding LAFCO, and so that's a completely different agency.
Right.
And I don't know if this board has jurisdiction to look into that or not, or who would handle LAFCO other than the LAFCO board and their chair.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed the property tax.
Okay, this is a different item.
All right, so John, maybe you can, then I can talk offline.
Okay.
Morning. Justin Hawkins from Hayport. I came in today because I don't know if you caught what happened in Hayport last week. But we had an EIR meeting. And in the past, we were told we weren't even allowed to have conversations with the board or the planning commission about the EIR. Somehow now we're having these meetings about the topic in front of everybody. And it's a disaster. I think that change is never easy. And real leadership, when people step up for leadership, it doesn't go over well. People are upset all the time. And the ordinances we have in this county, everyone's upset with them. I mean, no one's gotten what they want. That's probably a fair deal, more or less. And we can do better in this county. We've taken this board has actually taken the leadership to deal with the problem of cannabis that was ignored for 20 to 30 years in this county. By the past leadership of this county, supposedly. Not necessarily the board, but the people in charge, if you will. Well, I appreciate the leadership that this board has shown to step forward and try and remedy this problem in our community. Because it's not going to go away, and you can ignore it, but that's the ideologies of the past. You can have failed ideologies and continue to push those and live in the past and try and, I understand nostalgia. It's like a mirage. If you go close enough, it's not what you thought it was. These can be the good old days if we live for the future. And the future is cannabis in this county. And we want to be a part of this county. And, I would really appreciate the leadership to step forward again in this county board and do the right thing. You're at a junction today. You can either choose to go down the path of the past and live down there, and people who live in the past are bitter and resentful, and I understand that, right? But we can live forward to the future and look for our kids and do a better job in this community. And I hope you do the right thing today.
Anybody else for public comment? All right.
Members, John Horfall from Weaverville. As part of the environmental impact report there was a public comment period that was open, and 50 comments were collected and responses were made. And I've been trying to get access to that information. I think it's incredibly valuable to have that, to judge what's in the environmental impact report and what people think. However, there is an administrative process privilege that's being invoked to block that, the release of that information. So if you can't get a release for the public, I think it's incredibly valuable for the board members at least to have access to it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Director Hunter is here. Maybe you could follow up with him on where we are at in that process. Thank you.
Good morning, board. My name is Larry Winter from Heimpom, and I just want to express my appreciation for the new County Wildfire Protection Plan updates that's happening. They've doubled their money to do it. They're using fire science, and they're going to be using computer models to assess the risk for Trinity County, I think for the first time in a comprehensive way. I want to express my appreciation to Bobby for what she's been doing with her constituents. CAL FIRE is now doing an inventory of all roads in Trinity County, private roads that have only one way in and one way out, so they can now find out where the problems are with evacuations, with different neighborhoods that are out in the middle of nowhere, because these are big problems that we need to face and try to see if we can deal with it. So I hope you guys, when the updates are done, take them into consideration, and because they are a very important tool to use. And when you look at the Huffman bill and you look at the Trinity Collaborative, what they're doing, what this CWPP is, I think should be your primary document. Thank you.
All right, anyone else for public comment?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Steve Roadhouse, and I live near the Rush Creek Estates area. And I didn't want to lose this opportunity for you to consider as a threshold of significance the need to include locations, suitable or not, for cannabis, okay? For commercial cannabis, I should say. Even in the draft environmental impact report on page 18, it stated locations should be identified. It seems like in the staff report that was presented in Hayfork last week, that wasn't included. And we realize that cannabis is part of our culture, and it was voted for, and that's fine. But yet we feel that our grassroots efforts is time sensitive, and we'd like to get on the record to start the process for petitioning an opt-out. And there's several that already exist, to be included as an amendment to the existing ordinance as a mitigating measure in the final EIR, Environmental Impact Report. There's certain high-density areas, and I'm sure there's a multitude of things that you guys are all aware of that are other factors in the environmental aspects of it. But also this coincides with your resolution of 2016, I think it was number 77, about residents have a safe place to work and enjoy retirement, raise their families, and all those aspects as well. So the opt-out is a very critical and important, like I said, is significant, and we have many others in our community that feel the same. So if you would give that to consideration, it would be greatly appreciated and proper for our community as well. Thank you.
Steve, real quick question. Have you met with Kim after our discussion?
I took the advantage of calling her myself. And she said she would get back to me last week. And I realized that she's brand new and she's just moved here and there's a lot going on her plate. So I didn't push it, but I did write an email to her yesterday in relation to what we just talked about here, and said, how does this procedure work? Let's get it started, but I didn't want to lose this opportunity either to talk to you guys and say, hey, this is an important thing. It's here to stay, we all get that, but there are certain areas that need to be considered as not here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else for public comment?
Good morning, Supervisors. Brian Gossman from Hayfork. I just wanted to bring something to your attention. I hold a 10,000 square foot license under Mountain Cannabis Company, and I know that there are some things moving forward to hopefully possibly collect more money for law enforcement going forward in this new cannabis industry. But it's also my hopes that somebody is looking at the money already being spent. On August 28th, we were flown at low altitude by an airplane, I'm guessing subcontracted by the Sheriff's Department. And on August 31st, we were visited by sheriff deputies claiming to be at an illegal grow, which we are county licensed and state licensed. So I hope there is someone looking at the money already allocated and being spent before taking too much time and effort into raising more. Thank you.
Stephen Mencken from Hayfork. Can I pass these out to you guys?
To Tina? Thank you. She'll pass it to you.
So I wanted to thank the board. I wanted to thank all the growers that have set precedent for my brother and I to begin the process of building a brand. We've been a brand for about 1.5 years now. We're in almost 30 shops across the state, from San Diego to LA to Monterey to San Francisco, North Bay, East Bay, Sacramento. And actually I want to give you guys this too. These are next round of boxes. On those boxes, on the back of those boxes, per state requirement, Trinity County will be written on every single one of those boxes. And I just wanted to remind the board of that's a hooded Sherpa, you can like wear that. So, I just want to remind the board that in the general order, economics, right, sustainable jobs. My brother and I had a small little harvest party. We didn't sell any cannabis, they didn't go into the garden. We had about 30 people come camp and glamp in Hayfork. And I wanted to like meditate on how many other industries have brought 30 people to camp and glamp. As far as Los Angeles, they came from. One of my friends is a professional photographer, came from Georgia. And I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to try to do this, to build this brand. And that's kind of a glimpse of what all the other growers here could do if they weren't fighting a two-front battle. One being the local politics and maintaining their licensure and being able to be compliant. And the other is corporate cannabis that we're so far removed from because it's happening in the retail space. And there's billionaires and IPO Canadian companies that are losing money hand over fist trying to gain market share. Every moment the growers here are fighting the political battle, are fighting this draft EIR, is one less moment that Ryan and other people have to be in the retail storefront, to be talking about how beautiful Trinity County is and how the cannabis out of Trinity County is the best, and telling that to the customer. Because unless they're there, nobody is. It's just corporate branded cannabis that's forcing growers to white label to them so that they can build their brand and build their market share to one day make us obsolete once they figure out how to grow. And I appreciate you guys working really hard on the ordinance. I appreciate you guys allowing us to do this for the past 1.5 years. And I urge you to continue to fight for the cannabis community, because this could be something that every grower does. And if you have 500 growers that once a year bring 30 people to their communities to see their farm, That's 15,000 tourists, right? That's 15,000 stops at the Frontier fuel station. That's 15,000 shops at the grocery store.
Unfortunately, your time is up.
And that's just kind of how I think.
Thank you for your comments. Right. Okay, anyone else for public comment before we move to our presentation? No? All right. You sure?
Daryl Davis from Junction City. Guess I came today to maybe give you guys a little warning. I attended the debacle in Hayfork last week. Didn't see any of your faces there, but I know it's coming to you. And to give you a little heads up, I've been around, saw this whole thing happen with the EIR, this is concerning the EIR. Going all the way since day one, this has been known. If you can review the minutes, I don't know how many times Trinity Farm for Compliance and State stood here and said, we need an EIR, we need something. And I don't know whose hand, maybe it was in AdHoc's hand, but here we are in Hayfork last week. I'm listening to the panel talk about how they had to rush this EIR. We had to rush it. That's why we got all these numbers that are highly erroneous. And I'm just wondering, like, why did we have to rush that? A lot of people in here really tried to get that suggested, recommended, however we want to, but we can't do it ourselves. Oh, but wait a minute. A group did do it. They recommended looking at Humboldt CEQA, but it was said, no, you can't do that because they're having problems with it. They completely overcame that. To this day, we still don't have a valid EIR. That's my problem here. The erroneous numbers that I'm talking about, you're going to hear too. These are numbers that are going to, sounds like, invalidate cannabis growing at all in our county. And I'm waiting to figure this out. We've been up against a group known as TAA, and I guess I'm jumping ahead here. We've been working with this group TAA and trying to come to a compromise. And it seems to be, it's still not there. Something in the future here this day, I'm going to listen to somehow this same group is going to get like 100K or something. But that's just beside the point of this EIR thing. Just try to wrap all this up and try to figure it all cumulatively, like what this all means. The numbers that they talked about in Hayfork is just astounding in terms of water usage for cannabis. I'll just talk really quickly about that. They told me that I'm to put 17.5 gallons of water on every square acre of my cannabis. That is literally impossible. You're going to hear all this. It's not even funny. But the numbers that they came up with have nothing to do with Trinity County numbers. Every farmer has put their numbers in to the water board. We've all had to pay water boards in order to get a license. For 2016, I've recorded 40 years of water usage. It's there, the data is there for this county of Trinity. Can you think about that? Don't use Yolo County, don't use Denver, use Trinity County, but the data is there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will, he's right, it will come to the board and then it will go back to the commission and then back to the board if I have that process, if I remember it correctly. And the July 1st deadline has been moved for another couple years that we're all waiting for, so just a little update on that. Anybody else for public comment? Nope, all right.
Morning, John Letton, Douglas City. This is really sort of a point of order, and I'm looking for direction. I'd like to request that an item on the consent agenda be pulled. I'm not sure.
Not quite there yet, John, so if you
Okay.
just hold that thought.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, anyone else for public comment? All right. We will move, our presenters are here, you say, Tina? All right, we will move into our presentation, 1.1. Receive a presentation from Partnership Health Plan about healthcare provisions and Partnership Health Plan priorities in Trinity County. No fiscal impact. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Wendy West. I am the Northern Region Executive Director for Partnership Health Plan, and I just wanted to thank all of you for allowing me to come and spend a few minutes and talk about what we've been doing this last year. I did come last year to give you an update, and so, like I said, I just appreciate the time, and I guess I'll have a big audience today, so not as many last year. So, anyway, if I just press enter, will we go? For those of you that may not be familiar with Partnership or remember, in the fall of 2013, we actually assumed the responsibility of administering Medi-Cal for not just Trinity County, but 8 other Northern Region counties in California. We had already had the responsibility for 6, which brought us to a total of 14 counties that we administer. We have offices in Redding, Eureka, Santa Rosa, and Fairfield. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what our model is and why we're different than some of the other models that you'll see throughout California. We are actually a public agency, and we are what they refer to as a COES model, or a county organized health system. What makes us stand apart from some of the other models that you'll find in California with managed Medi-Cal is that we partner with the county. So with your Health and Human Services and all of the other departments, as well as our community members and our providers. We also are local. We don't have shareholders, and honestly, this sounds a little bit probably obnoxious, but I feel the other thing that makes us stand apart is we do it better, and we do it for less, and I'm going to share that with you a little bit. As you can see, we actually are able to administer Medi-Cal for your county and for the rest of our counties for an administrative rate of 4%. Other models are able to keep or recoup up to 15% of the fees that they are paid by the state. We are very proud of the fact that we keep our administrative costs very low. And again, what makes us stand out and makes us different is we're able to then take those funds, the difference between the 4 and the 15%, and reinvest it back into the community. And actually pay providers more, pay for services that aren't necessarily always covered by Medi-Cal, and honestly just provide better care. We have a board of directors that is representative of our 14 counties, and we are responsible for over 500,000 lives in our 14 counties. Just want to do a very sincere shout out to Letty Garza from the Health and Human Services Agency. She is your representative from Trinity County on our board, and just want to say that she is absolutely a pleasure to work with. We partner very well, and we've had some very big accomplishments in this last year, from migrating the CCS population, the children, over to whole child model, and several other things. And I just want to really give a big shout out to Letty and her staff for collaborating so well with us. But those things were very, very big projects to undertake. In Trinity County and most of our other counties, we are actually responsible for over 1/3 of the total population. So when you say that we have a presence in our region, it's not an understatement. There are more individuals on Partnership Health Plan than probably any other coverage. When I said we also do this better, I'm very proud to say that although we probably inundate our providers and our members with surveys as required by the state, we do get some good information back. And this past year, we were very proud of the fact that 92% of our members rate partnership as the best health plan that they work with. We also receive very good scores back from our provider network. And to me, this is kind of the secret, or the secret sauce of why we're able to administer Medi-Cal at a lower rate with a higher quality. And that is the fact that we build our network. Previously, before we were managed Medi-Cal in Trinity County and our other counties, if you received Medi-Cal, it wasn't necessarily very meaningful if you couldn't get into a doctor and you spent your time waiting in an emergency room, etc. So we immediately went to work trying to contract with providers because we could pay a higher rate that weren't necessarily taking Medi-Cal patients before, as well as we have worked very hard to help the providers that are currently here, from hospitals to clinics, recruit new providers to the area. Although 7 new providers may not sound huge, that's a huge number for Trinity County. And we have also, as we talked about reinvesting back into our community, we have awarded nearly $90,000 as recruitment sign-on bonuses to get physicians and mid-level providers to come to your county. So super proud of that. We also, like I said, we inundate people with surveys as required. And this last year for our 7 northern counties, we received a 99% approval rate by your providers that are in our network here. Trinity County alone also received over $200,000 from our quality improvement program. This is also unique to a POS plan and some of the other, versus some of the other regional models. And that is basically designed to incentivize our providers to provide excellent care. So just to give you an example, if a family physician successfully serves their their infant and child population to obtain the appropriate number of well-child visits and immunizations if they want them, or a family doctor may perhaps achieve a certain rate of females that receive their mammograms, etc. Then we incentivize them to do that by giving them quality incentive dollars. And so unlike the old story of, the old school managed care where it was, some people had the belief that you don't want people to go to the doctor, you want to save money. Our philosophy is get people in to do their wellness checks, to do their preventative care, and we will save them because our members will be healthy and won't be in the hospital. And that's what we've been able to prove really, really does work. We've also granted, in collaboration with Trinity County Health and Human Services and some other agencies, we've provided over $195,000 worth of grants to help with homeless and housing. The housing grant was the largest use of the strategic reserves that we had historically. We actually have invested $25 million total over the 14 counties based on the number of members in each county. Very proud of that as well. Again, investing those dollars back in the communities. I mentioned before that the way that we are able to be successful and that we are able to assist our members in becoming healthier is to get them into the physicians that they need to see to do their wellness checks, etc. And we have actually successfully seen a reduction of over 35% of emergency room visits in the northern region. And those are primarily those types of visits that should have probably taken place in urgent cares and doctor's offices previously, but members could not get into them. And so we're again very proud of that. Despite our efforts to bring new providers into the area, we also know that there's still a vast shortage. So we also try to get very creative. For example, we are also responsible and provide non-medical transportation to members to get to appointments. And what I mean by non-medical, it's not that they're not going to a medical related appointment, but there isn't necessarily a medical reason that they're able to get themselves there. So if someone doesn't have a vehicle, or that type of thing, we actually provide transportation to those appointments. Now, if somebody had a medical reason, we also are responsible for that, but it's a different type of transportation. The use of our transportation benefits has been increasing each month, and from January to March this year, we actually provided services to 79 individual members. And I can tell you I don't have the numbers here in the presentation, but that has almost doubled again since just March to this time of year. Just to give you a little insight on what we're working on for this next year, we, and you'll hear more about this as the time goes on, but we are partnering with 8 of our counties to help implement what is referred to as drug Medi-Cal. We like to refer to it as our wellness and recovery program. The state of California, as you probably are aware, is requiring all counties to expand their wellness and recovery services. And up here in the north, our counties just are not able to necessarily do that independently. So as a first time ever to happen, we volunteered and have partnered with our 8 counties to build a regional model of the wellness and recovery program so that our smaller counties can benefit from some of the services in the other larger counties. It's been a long time in the works. We had to create our own financial model and everything with the state, and we are finally hoping to go live in February of this next year, which is a really big accomplishment. And I know you'll hear more from Letty and the team when that comes up. We also had a very successful, as I referred to before, transition for our CCS children to the whole child model. And we're working very closely with our all of our providers here to work on what we refer to as our HEDIS scores. It's the health effectiveness data and information set. Those are those metrics that basically measure some of those things that I just described, from women having mammograms, children doing well child visits, all of those types of diabetics having screenings. We are actually held accountable by the state to keep those at certain levels. We always try to exceed those. If we do not keep those metrics and those visits at a certain level, we can actually receive sanctions. And so we're working very closely with our clinics that are not at those certain levels to accomplish them. Many times it's not due to lack of effort, it's due to lack of resources. It's a little bit tough to get a mammogram in Trinity County. You can't do it. And so one example of being resourceful and creative, we actually have worked together with the county and the local providers to bring in a mobile mammography van. And we are going to do that again a couple more times before the end of the year. We also are working for our National Committee of Quality Assurance certification, and we are implementing an entirely new core IT system. That is basically my overview, just telling you a little bit of what we've been doing and what we've accomplished. And I just wanted to open up and see if you had any questions.
Board members?
Just one. How do you let the public know when you have these mobile mammograms?
We work with the specific different providers that are sponsoring it, and we actually do a couple of things. We put it on our website, we put it in our member newsletter, the clinics also advertise it, and we actually even do outbound calls to anybody in the area that's needing a mammogram. We attempt to give them a phone call and let them know it's coming. And then of course, a lot of the appointments are made right through the clinics and the providers here in town that even maintain a list of knowing the individuals that need them, and they reach out as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for the work to keep people out of our emergency rooms and kept them in. I know a lot of my constituents have had that problem over the years, and use the clinic format is a huge step forward.
We still have a ways to go. We need more providers. I mean, if you're sick and you can't get into the doctor, then that's where you need to go. But I appreciate that, and we're working very hard at it.
Do you also work with behavioral health
We do.
Thank you. And thank you for the kind of AODS that you're moving along.
Would we get from you or Letty a little bit more detailed data on the services and numbers over the last few years?
I can provide a written report as well if you'd like.
That'd be great, just to get a little bit more.
Yes, we can do that. Okay, absolutely.
Okay. Questions, comments? No? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, I appreciate it, and again, thank you to Letty and her team that have been super great work.
I'll see you next year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We're going to just take a quick 5-minute break before we start the consent calendar. These items include routine, non-controversial matters that will be acted upon by the board by one roll call motion. A member of the board, staff, or public may request an item to be pulled and considered separately. Supervisor Groves, did you say you had something?
Yeah, 2.5.
Supervisor Chadwick. Supervisor Ford.
2.5.
Okay.
Fight over. No, you get it all.
Supervisor Brown?
No, I do not.
Okay. With that,
Motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
oh, I'm sorry, my apologies.
Wow. See how quick I react?
Nice try.
So,
I would like to pull 2.2.
thank you. Yeah. John, did you have something?
Well, I may have misunderstood, thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted 2.5 pulled, and I think that was done, but then when Supervisor Finley stated that quick motion, I didn't understand it, but.
My,
2.5.
her failure, yeah.
It's all my fault.
I just wanted to echo 2.5 for the public, for 95,000.
Which letter?
And I'll buy a vowel.
So I have 2.2 and 2.5 pulled. Anyone else from the public? Before all right. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass the consent agenda.
You have a second? See how I learned?
Thank you. Supervisor Finley?
Yes.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Supervisor Chadwick? Supervisor Moore? Yes. All right. Moving on to 2.2, I believe, was pulled from a member of the public. Adopt a resolution designated the Trinity County Arts Council as the local arts agency, no fiscal impact.
Diana Sheen, I was just wanting to know what that meant, and because when I was on the Arts Council years ago, there was no way that was going to happen, and that's what I'm just wondering about it. And what does agency mean? Local arts agency. So I know you don't have to answer me. Thank you.
I had an answer, because they don't have that in their backup. It's more of a reapplying for a grant is the item. John?
The purpose of doing that is so by having this position and getting money from the county, then they can get funding from the state.
And that is the grant that they're reapplying for. So All right, with that, any other comments, questions?
Council or Richard, one way on that?
No, I really don't, but John's corrected, yeah, in order for him to receive the draft.
Yeah, it's in the resolution, so.
Sorry.
Motion to approve 2.2 as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. We got arm wrestle with the second?
Yeah.
John can have it.
No.
We got arm wrestle, who's
No.
gonna have it?
We'll get the key.
All right, guess, John, you're gonna get it.
Okay, I got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you're right, my apologies.
Supervisor Finley?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
And
Supervisor Chadwick?
Aye.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Moore?
Yes. All right, thank you. Moving on to 2.5, ratify the chairman's signature on the agreement with Trinity Action Association, Inc., $95,000 from the Cannabis Department. Keith, I think you first pulled.
Yeah, I'd received an email from the Trinity Journal, and they requested to be pulled. I don't see Wayne here. Sally, do you have Wayne's questions?
No, he emailed you.
Okay, I pulled it for, that they wanted pulled. I'm not sure what he wanted pulled for.
I believe that in his email, he suggested that there was a question regarding the vote, which I don't know if this will cover or not, that was held in closed session as to the way the vote was held and how we voted. And that was it for this one.
Okay. Richard, didn't you have discussions with him over at that?
Yeah, she has sent communications with county council, and she has defined why the votes were not publicized. So, I mean, that was a closed session item, so I don't know how far you go into that, but I know they've had conversations, I've been CC'd on all their emails.
Okay.
I believe the question has been satisfactory to answer. He may not, but I think it has been.
Okay.
All right, this item is to ratify the signature. Any other, David, did you have anything else you want to add, or?
No, it's just, the issue is when a settlement is final in closed session, it's reported out and the vote is reported. That's not what happened here. What's happening here is, that's what's happening now, so.
Anyone else from the public? Yes, thank you. So this is an item to ratify the contract.
Right.
Or the settlement agreement, my apologies.
Andrew Franklin, Junction City. So TAA is to be awarded $95,000 for attorney fees and costs. That's a lot of money. Their attorney, Mr. Underwood, is known to work locally. My information is 3 years old, but he billed the PUD at the rate of $150 per hour. So let's bump him up to $200 per hour. So he could spend 400 hours. That's 10 40-hour weeks preparing this case. This case didn't go to trial. I know of no witnesses. I know of no depositions. Simply a paper case. I attended when him and Mr. Cole and Mr. Belanco presented their arguments to the judge. That court session lasted an hour or so. I know there were 2 other court appearances. So does the county have an invoice for these legal fees? Do you have it itemized? Do you know what you're paying? 400 hours of $200 an hour legal work? That's an awful lot of work. That's like murder case kind of thing. And that leaves an extra 15 grand. Are we paying TAA's board members to sit around and figure out how to sabotage the county cannabis program? Are we paying for dinner and drinks for their meetings? What is being paid for here? And then the case itself, the agreement, was the result of compromise. No party admits fault or liability, as reported by the Trinity Journal. So if the county has no fault or liability, why are they paying $95,000 to this group who brought this suit? And then the court denied all actions requested by the TAA petitioners that sought a court order for the county to comply with CEQA. Their motion was denied. This is some kind of compromise. Now, rumor has it that TAA said, well, if you don't pay this amount, then we're gonna appeal, and it's gonna cost you more. And basically, this is a form of extortion, in my opinion, that they're, hey, pay us $95,000 or this is gonna get worse. But how can they even explain this, 95,000? How can you possibly vote to pay this amount without knowing what it's for? I would like to know if there's an invoice. Another thing that bugs me is that when TAA members speak before this board, I wish they would have the guts to identify themselves and say that I'm here and I'm a TAA member, I'm a TAA board member. I never hear that at these meetings. So, thank you very much.
Madam Chair and Board, John Letton. Sometimes I appear as an individual, and that's okay. Today I'm appearing for myself and a spokesperson for TAA. To respond to all of Mr. Franklin's questions would take a very long time. I'm going to do that privately. I'd rather just go ahead and say what I planned to say in the first place. The sequence of the settlement, well, first of all, going back, there were a number of meetings between TAA and representatives of the board trying to settle our differences during 2018. We virtually begged the county representatives to listen to us because we were right on the law. That didn't work. The suit was filed in January. What the suit did is two things. It required the county to comply with CEQA on a site-specific basis. That benefited the growers because the growers have to have that CEQA done to get a state license, pure and simple. The other thing was under the Public Records Act to force the program to be transparent. That benefited the public and it benefited the growers. The growers have an opportunity to see whether or not they're being treated differently than other applicants for licenses, and the public has its right to know. The county originally fought both of those points. The county eventually agreed to both of those points. TAA won in that settlement agreement. The standard language about nobody admits fault and so forth will appear in virtually any court settlement. The settlement terms were reached in late July. On August the 6th, the board held a closed session. We were told after that session that the board had approved the proposed terms of agreement. On the 7th, well, the agreement signatures are dated August 7th by both TAA and the county. Pursuant to a gentleman's agreement, there was an agreed press release that was completed on the 9th. It appeared in the Journal on the 14th. The settlement agreement was not dependent upon court approval. It was a contract between TAA and the county. That agreement was presented to the court for purposes of getting the court's agreement to retain jurisdiction for 2 years. That happened the week after the settlement agreement was signed off. I need more time to go further, but the purposes were clear and the agreement benefited everybody in the county, and it so states in the agreement. It was in the public's interest. I'd love to explain more.
So John, I assume you'd agree to ratify the signature, which is the item.
I think this item, thank you for the question. This item is not necessary. The agreement is final. It was a final a long time ago. If anything, it appears to me that this is a method to put up a smokescreen as to what the vote was on August the 6th. Because the law requires that that vote be revealed and how each member voted on the settlement. And so if this is on the agenda in order to say, I have asked for unanimous consent on this and have a 5-0 vote, it ain't going to hold up. What the Trinity Journal is asking for, and I have asked for individually, is disclosure of the vote that was taken on August the 6th. That's when the deal was done.
So I see David or Richard.
This item actually be put it on to ratify the chair's signature because direction was given to staff to execute the contract but it was not given to, we don't have anything in our record showing 10 years from now when someone pulls this and says, what authority did you have to sign this? The direction given after the closed session did not state that, so that's why we're bringing this forward, just so in future years, when we look back and somebody says, well, why did the county have authority to write a $95 check, a $95,000 check? We have the chair's signature ratified here, so it'll be in the minutes now. It wasn't in the minutes prior to that.
Well, I appreciate that, Richard. The agreement was signed by the chair and counsel for the county. And that's the way, in my experience, that's the way contracts are entered into when they're settling a lawsuit. That may be a distinction without a difference. I'm not too sure. But there's no doubt that there's a government code section that's specifically on this point, that the vote approving the settlement has to be disclosed to the public.
David, did you, or no? You were just looking at me, so I didn't know if you had some.
Yeah, and I think that is the distinction that needs to be made, that there was no vote approving the settlement until now.
If that's true, then the deal is off.
John?
Well over 3 minutes.
Yes, John, sorry, where it says 3-minute time frame. So you
Talk
can
to Mr.
inform
Prentice
the,
later about that.
Please
But
do.
boy, that is, the county is really gonna regret that.
so,
Gladly donate one.
did you wanna finish, or?
Yeah, I
from the
just
board?
wanted to say that the salient point is that this is the vote on the settlement agreement. The auditor couldn't write this $95,000 check unless this ratification vote occurred. That's the way the auditor, look, you could go out and sign a settlement agreement today, you could have me sign it, it wouldn't be worth the ink that you put on the paper unless this board ratifies it. Only 5 people can bind this county to a contract, and it's you 5, and you have to vote on it. That's why it's here. As far as I know, it wasn't in the closed session. There was no vote to approve the settlement agreement, or to go out and execute it. They don't know the terms, they haven't seen it. Now it's here, they see it, they can ratify it, or they can say no, we don't want it.
Thank you for the clarification. You're
Justin
next.
Hawkins from Hayfork. I'm going to try and be in a better mood than a little bit earlier, but this is kind of serious. This is really serious. I don't think we've had a moment like this in a few years here, where we can choose to go down the future with the community and do the right thing, but we can continue to do a TA style. I mean, we just heard it. Backroom deals. They negotiated backroom deals with the county for weeks and months, and then when they didn't get what they want, they hired their local buddy to sue, and now they're hiding behind him. And now finally, someone has the cojones to stand up and say, "I'm with TAA. I'm here to abuse the county." We can break the Stockholm Syndrome right now. Their reason for suing on this is to push the EIR to the point where it's so rushed that it's fundamentally flawed. But beyond that, they're going after public records because you want to know what? They want to go after their neighbors who are farmers. They hate cannabis that much that they're willing to go after their neighbors. They want to into the public records to know what's going on. It's a reign of terror against their neighbors. Is that what we're going to stand for in this community? Is that sort of old, bankrupt ideology? Live in the past and be bitter? No, we want to go into the future. We can do better. Do not ratify this because I can tell you right now that the consequences will be more expensive in the future if you do not stand up and do what's right in this county.
Tom Fielding, Hayfork. So this subject, obviously, there's a lot of emotion behind it. Justin said a lot of good things there, so I'm not going to just reiterate what he said. But, you know, we are looking to you 5 for leadership of the future. And as I understand how that all went down, they were basically told that there's not a case there anyhow, and you shouldn't fold to threats or suits. I think since the money's coming out of the cannabis fund, then it's the cannabis growers that have put that money there. And maybe as a community, we'd like to see you stand up, even if that means you end up spending $150,000 of our money, rather than just bow down to an idle threat. And it had already proved somewhat idle. So I just want to reinforce the idea that, you know, you have the support of the community, and We hope that you make good decisions for the long-term growth and the long-term prosperity of the people that live here. And $95,000 could be used for so many more things that is included for those four principles in the general order, for tourism, for programs, for all sorts of things, rather than just legal fees for somebody that are just basically threatening their community and threatening lawsuits based really on nothing that's holding the water. Thank you.
Jake Rosenquist, Hayport. I'm a member of TAA.
We're not old enough.
Obviously, that's made up. But it seems like, honestly, there's been a lot of made-up stuff. Like growers needing 174,000 gallons of water per day for 10,000 square feet. Or me taking 44 trips to town every day during the harvest season.
So Jake, is this on this?
This is
2.5?
100% about this.
All right, just checking.
Parts that aren't made up these days are that the growers who had to get a lawyer to defend themselves in this lawsuit, they didn't get their legal fees paid by TAA. Olivia and I are in court multiple times a month for growing weed with a weed license in Trinity County. If Trinity County loses that, they have to pay our legal fees. This is like, this is common sense. This is like, I can't even wrap my head around how we could be at a point here where people are standing up being like, they lost the lawsuit, why are we paying them? You guys are setting a precedent for how this operates in the future. And before you make a decision on this, just remember that this isn't the last lawsuit that comes in front of the county. This county has cut probably 7 or 8 licensed farmers down in the last 3 years. Some of us are still in court. So whatever precedent you set for rolling over and dying, you're going to have to look the people who are coming next in the eyes and be like, maybe we shouldn't have made that decision. When they're suing you for millions of dollars, not for $100,000, for millions. You guys have cut millions and millions and millions of dollars down in licensed cannabis in this county. These things take time. Stand up and let's do what's right. I'm going to have to cross that bridge when I cross it here, and hopefully I eat my words today. Hopefully you guys say, hey, we set this precedent. No is no. I'm praying that that's what happens because that's the right thing to happen for our community. Not for us just to say, hey, sue the county, you get 100 grand. Because I tell you what, I would rather sue the county to get 100 grand than move 174,000 gallons of water a day as a cannabis farmer.
Anybody else?
Kate Graves from Lewiston. I am wondering how this money comes from the cannabis department. Looking over the purpose of what the cannabis money was collected for, it seems to be misspent in many ways, and I would say it's misspent this way also. I haven't paid a dime into the cannabis fund. I pay as a taxpayer into the general fund. I don't see why this isn't coming from the general fund. Also, this whole interaction with TAA. They're basically a secret group. They are in it and then they're not, which to me means you're still in it. We've had people that were on the planning commission that were in the TAA, and Supervisor Groves cleared that up, but they were still in it. So this whole thing is fraught with ambiguity and paybacks, and it's just like a really bad mystery. And it shouldn't be, because this is our money, and this is our county, and this is what you're doing to us. I know how the county has handled other court cases with private parties. You've drug out election contests for years when they should have been heard in 20 days. We are going to appellate court with 2 election contests in another case. No one's paying our attorney fees, and you probably won't. Who knows how long it's going to get drug out. This whole thing smells, and I think that's one of the problems with people. It smells. You have the elitists who hate cannabis, okay, But on top of that, they're getting a deal that they didn't want public. They don't want this public. And how are you taking it from the cannabis people? It's just like, it's bad on top of bad, and then you're stealing from the people you're messing over. And I would like it explained how this is coming from the cannabis department, for one. I would like to know who's on TAA, past and present, for the last 5 years at least, because this is how long it's impacted us. I'm not into this secret society thing. You guys don't care that we take stuff to the appellate court. So why do you care that TAA was going to? And all of this should be explained. You may not have to legally, but you should morally and ethically. And so it's clear to people what's going on. And then maybe if it's clear to us, we won't be angry about it. Maybe we'll go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But when you keep it secret and hidden, you just more angst from people, and for good reason. Thank you.
I'm Darrell Davis, Junction City. I am not a TAA member. I would like to know who they all are. We know who the cannabis cultivators are. That's all on record. I also would like to know why it's coming from cannabis. It's amazing that the same people who didn't want us to have any money at all, jobs, livelihoods, the inability to employ anybody that was shot and eat at restaurants in town, those that are left. Those same people want our money though, and they're readily here to take it. That's amazing if you start thinking about it. Where did the money come from? It came from us. They want us to not have any, but they want what we do have. That's what I'm seeing. It's pretty obvious. I'll just leave it at that.
I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent. So my brother and I sell pre-rolls. And for every pre-roll pack sold, we donate to different charities around California. It's our way of putting our money where our mouth is, because I think it's one of the few votes that you really have in society is corporations run America, they get laws passed by lobbying, and so you spend your money where your mouth is. So we've chosen to support 5 different grassroots organizations. And the questions come up time and time again of, when are we gonna pick a charity? When are we gonna pick the elementary school, the fire department of Trinity County? And the answer has always been when Trinity County decides to accept us as growers and make us feel confident in our position in Trinity County. Because as a brand, we have to be, especially in such a volatile and regulated market, we have to be dynamic. We have to be able to move on a dime. And so if the county decides to buckle to TAA, and TAA decides to come back with another frivolous lawsuit and bully the program out of existence, we have to be ready to leave. And for us to choose a long-term relationship with a local organization or a local charity means that we will be further tied to Trinity when we don't have the confidence in Trinity having the confidence in our growers. I know we have a program and I appreciate all the hard work, but it still feels like, from a cultivator standpoint, we're unsure of our future. And we're talking about agriculture. Infrastructure investment in agriculture, as you talk to many of the growers, is insane, especially with fish and wildlife and the hoops that they make you jump through. As many of you know from dealing with growers that have confided in you, we need you guys to shoot this down and show that growers that you're here to fight for us. You're here to fight for the economics that we can bring. Because most of the growers have to grow super clean, they have to grow super organically, and that's just to pass state standards. So when it comes to an environmental perspective, like, we try to foster an ecosystem, right? We don't spray pesticides, we release beneficial bugs. We plant flowers, right? Cannabis is a bioremediator. They use it to suck the radiation out of the soil in Chernobyl. The smell and just all of these arguments are just, the same terpenes that are in pine needles are the same terpenes that are in cannabis. And same with mangoes and lavender. So we're talking about odor in the draft EIR. We're being bullied around, and it's hard for us to have confidence that the county's going to be like, no, this is an industry we want here for decades. We want to develop craft cannabis estates.
because that's what Trinity County could have. They could have craft cannabis estates, beautiful properties that market this county. Every pre-roll we sell, I stress this again, has Trinity County written on the side of it. People don't know Hayfork unless it's for cannabis. There's a company named after Hayfork. How many other industries have named themselves, or businesses named themselves after a town in our county and then exported that across the state? And the feds are about to open up shop. Like that, this could be across state lines, this could be internationally. We could literally become an international craft cannabis destination. But it starts with you guys not ratifying this and showing strength for the growing community.
Thanks, Steve. Anything else?
Good morning, supervisors and staff. I also want to thank you all for all your hard work in this important subject for our community. I also want to encourage you to consider not ratifying this settlement. TAA brought this suit after agreeing to and blessing the urgency ordinance and the permanent ordinance. They brought this suit after the county had already contracted with an environmental consultant to prepare an environmental impact report. And the notice of preparation had already flown. The first judge that heard the matter ruled it meritless. Meritless. It's a frivolous suit. TAA never mentioned any specific environmental impacts, not one. And our county was represented by counsel that was former partner with county council here today, when they thought the best path forward for Trinity County was to prepare a ban ordinance. And it's that old way of thinking and that reactionary, biased viewpoint that continues to be a problem with us moving forward here. For the social benefits, the environmental protection, and the obvious economic safety net that cannabis provided this community for a long time. Our county doesn't have an economic development department. But the people in the room today, and the members of the board, especially Cannabis Ad Hoc, this is our de facto economic development department for the poorest county in the state. So I want to encourage you to seek additional legal counsel that doesn't bring this bias. And take this thing to court. Don't ratify this agreement. Let's go to trial. If we pull a jury from Trinity County, I think we know where this is going to end up. It's a frivolous lawsuit. So please reconsider ratification and don't set the precedent that you can negotiate and bless a program and then turn around with sour grapes when you don't get every last thing that you ask for and sue our poor county. And they also sued every single applicant to the program. That hasn't really been talked about much, but it's important that everybody knows that. So thank you all. You have a very important decision to make this morning.
Anyone else? Before I bring it back to the board? One, two.
John Borkwell from Weaverville. This gets back to the money being paid from step 4, or item 4 in the agreement. It says within 30 days of the effective date, the county should pay the TAA the sum of $95,000 made payable as separately stated in writing. TAA's counsel should provide the county's counsel as compensation for TAA's attorney's fees and costs. Will that document be released?
Hello, board. My name is Larry Winter from High Pond. I have a couple of issues I want to bring up. One is I want to echo people's concern about why this money is coming out of the cannabis fund. The SEPA aspect of the court case, and I'm no lawyer, seemed like we were following what the state of California was required. I have a permit based on what you guys are doing in this county. I have an annual permit from the state. The California Public Records Act, though, seems a little more troubling. It seems like the county was not fulfilling their requirement to follow the California Public Records Act. And that was kind of a sticking point. And so, if that's the case, that we weren't providing documentation that was being requested, regardless of their motivation, those documents should have been released. And that why would the cannabis fund pay for law breaking by the county if that is what happened? And that's what appears to be what happened, because the remediation for this is to provide all the documentation that they asked for. And so I'm assuming that we were violating the law. And that should not be coming out of the cannabis fund, because that's not part of paying for the administrating of this process. We don't pay for people violating the law. That should be coming out of the county general fund, if anything. And whoever advised the county department to do that to begin with should be fired. The second part, give me a second here, is the apparently violation of the Brown Act in that closed session, that you voted on something and didn't report it out. Which to me, I think, makes that vote null and void. The second part is today's meeting. Is it public knowledge that that $95,000 has been paid already? As a point of order. We're here with the agenda saying you're going to approve the payment. Has it been paid already?
Let's hear it.
Yeah. We're not approving the payment, we're approving the signature, and yes, the payment has been made.
Not lying, guys.
Why wasn't that information? Why wasn't that information on the agenda?
Yeah, let's.
In regard to the Brown Act,
In the contract, it does say.
it's never been reported to the public that that $95,000 has been paid. And here we are discussing this. We're all assuming that it hasn't been paid yet, and you're going to now approve or deny it. It's been already approved.
It is the ratification of the signature of the contract, so that is really a very narrow agenda item.
And so why was it paid without the signature on the contract? So what I'm contending is this meeting, this agenda item is a violation of the Brown Act because it doesn't fully inform the public of what we are doing here today.
If you'd like to add any of the comments from a procedural standpoint? I'm assuming it was, but.
Can you speak up or into his microphone, please? We can't hear what Mr. Prentice is saying.
What I've said was, my previous comments were based on the fact that I wasn't aware the money had been paid.
And I'm not
He's lying.
All right, everyone.
So we pay
Extortion.
$100,000 without county council even knowing about it?
Whoa.
Yeah.
We have to keep this.
And Margaret Long's too chicken to be here tonight.
Yes. So, one at a time, and we have to bring you up to the podium, please, so. All right, anyone else? Public comment?
So did we pay $100,000 and $95,000 without the county knowing? Simple question.
We'll have to get that answer.
I mean, it's a simple question.
All right, anyone else before I bring it back to the board?
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Can I speak again?
anybody else who hasn't spoke, would like to come forward? And then,
Somebody left their glasses here. I guess the question is that if you vote no, do they have to give the money back?
Good luck, guys.
so before I All right.
If I may, counsel, I'm interested in that question.
Yeah.
Technically, yes, they would have to give the money back.
This is so bad. We want our money back.
That, sir, would be, if the money is requested back, would you go through a civil suit? And if so, could you do a representation, or could the actual farmers?
Please address the board.
Could the
Yes, not the
farmers,
council.
could the farmers have a representation?
Chair, we're getting off topic here, please.
So it really is the ratification of the signature. It's a very narrow agenda item. I've given some leeway on, so both sides have some comment on the item, but Supervisor Finley is right. We're getting a little bit off mark here.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was something that if the farmers could represent themselves if they had a disagreement with the way something was taken out, that's all. Not anything against the board.
No, I know.
But for them to protect themselves against groups like the TAA, because the TAA is actually a common phenomenon.
And those are questions you can offline ask of CAO and council perhaps, but not at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, once again, Brian Gostin from Hayfork. So to keep on this subject, I would like to say that you do not ratify this signature. Obviously, a hornet's nest has been poked within the past 5 minutes. And definitely on the cultivator side, there's been a lot of talk in our community of this being very quiet and kind of closed-door session, and how that just kind of reeks of bad news. So in moving forward with the new light in the public eye, what we have now been enlightened to, I urge you in whatever legal capacity you can to please be transparent. Why the vote has not been made public, I don't know. When TAA sued, they sued the county. I now know they sued me. I wasn't aware of that. But you know, we elect you guys to represent us. Definitely, politics are not my game, but you know, you have the job of representing us, and I don't know if there is a fear that you won't be voted back in when votes are made public, but you know, this is the economic future of this county. I know some people agree with it, some people don't. That's every case in every way. But please, in any new development that we have going on, make it as transparent as possible so that we can trust in you to do the right thing moving forward for Trinity.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Any other questions from the board members? I know a couple. Oh,
I have a question for
sure.
council. David, will this replace the vote that we held in closed session regarding our approval of this item?
You're approving the agreement.
We're approving the agreement.
Right.
You almost indicated a little earlier that this will, we did not approve the agreement in closed session.
You didn't have a language.
Right.
So now you're approving.
When
the
will
agreement.
the closed session vote ever be available to the public?
It's up to you if you guys want
Okay,
to vote.
okay. Excuse me. Shut up. The GOV Government Code, Section 54957.1A, and going down to 3, capital A and B, I can't participate in this. I feel that it's illegal.
Yes.
So, continue and let me know when you're done.
So, obviously, you're not in these discussions the way Margaret was, so you're a little bit behind on this item. So, we would have more questions if Margaret was here, obviously. But, and I know, Richard, you were in many discussions with her on this subject. And as I pointed out earlier, it is just to ratify the agreement. We did, as you pointed out, we didn't have language when it was brought to us in closed session. Obviously, all legal matters are done in closed session. We can't talk about details of those, any legal matter. As you see, we have plenty on our closed session after today. So, any other questions? Well, we do have a question on the money in the cannabis department. Richard, do you want to speak to that? Many legal issues, depending on the department, will be charged for those.
As we do with any department, whether it be mental health or any non-general fund, if they encounter legal issues, we pay for them out of those funds. Where the cannabis fees are technically, they're in general fund, but they are for a specific service, and that's to administer and enforce the cannabis program. Therefore, any fees that are incurred because of the cannabis program will be paid out of the cannabis fees, and the auditor is the one who reviews all the invoices and approves those and felt it's appropriate.
Yeah. As well as we've had a few lawsuits in our election department. That department certainly has been hit with those costs. So.
And they are general fund. That's a general fund department, so where it comes out of general fund.
All right. Any other questions, board members?
I just want to have council reiterate. In closed session, if I step over the line, what went on in closed session.
Could you speak up, please?
Yes, ma'am. In closed session, we were not given a contract to approve. We gave direction with a proposal.
Yes. And I can say, Supervisor Groves, what's happening here is not unusual. I'm county council in 2 other counties, and this happens all the time. The board looks in concept of a settlement, they tell staff to go out and do it, it comes back as another matter where they actually vote on the detailed terms of the agreement. Tell them it's not final. I know there's an issue with the payment of the funds. I was not aware that was done. It doesn't change the fact of what the sequence of events is. There was a conceptual agreement, direction to staff to finalize it. The final is here. That's what you're doing today.
So at the point we had it, there was no agreement. We went with a proposal to the other party.
No. Yes.
So there was nothing to approve except.
From a legal standpoint, that's absolutely correct. It's not final until this board votes on the terms of an agreement. You didn't have them before you.
Okay. Thank you.
So who signed the check?
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, Jeremy.
So if it's not ratified, what is the process that follows?
The county would have to go about unraveling the payment of the money and request that those funds be returned. I'm suspecting that would probably take a court action. I don't think we're going to give it back willingly. Because the statements they made here today, whether this is a final settlement, I don't believe they're legally correct on that, but it would start a difficult process, not impossible, but
Can you please speak up?
difficult.
He stated it would be a difficult process to move forward.
Madam Chair, I realized that I could help out on some of these
I
facts.
can't, John, sorry.
All right.
And
Not as a member of TA.
TA can give it back right now. We can solve this right now. Go get the check.
Okay, everyone, I do need some order. Thank you, sorry. And sorry, John, I just can't open it back up after it's come back to the board.
Maybe we can get the facts outside.
And anything else you'd like to add, David?
No, look, we are where we are. My legal advice to the board and in front of the public is, frankly, this is the final settlement agreement. You either approve it or you don't approve it. If you don't approve it, it's not a settlement.
And I had one further question. In your opinion, is our legal counsel, is Supervisor Fenley correct that this is an illegal action?
No.
Thank you for asking that question. And so nothing prevents him from voting on this item today, except his own choosing.
Well,
And it's not,
People disagree with each other, he disagrees with me, that's fine.
okay. So what would the board like to do?
I would like to make the motion so we can move forward and have our discussion. And so I move to ratify the chairman's agreement, or signature on the agreement with TAA.
I'll second. All right, I have a motion and a second, and any
So,
further discussion?
yes, I have. I will explain why I voted presently, or in the past, and why I voted, how I'm going to vote today. Though, and I'm going to pull the old man card, guys, because I know you're all young and that have got up and opposed. And I get it. If I was your age and in your business and right is right and wrong is wrong. And
Age discrimination, you know, I'm your age. It's hard to
I'm your age.
listen to you
Okay,
say
wait,
that.
wait.
You're all young, sorry.
So,
I'll shut up.
ran for supervisor law, so if you
Hold
want
it.
to get up here.
I'll shut up.
do
Hold it, I do, please, everyone, we have to have order, else I'll have to
So
shut the
there
meeting
is a
down.
point if you want to keep your mouth shut. If you don't, we can just walk out today.
Let's do it, walk out, go.
Yeah.
So let's,
So,
Please.
so the fact is that you're visualizing what's right, and sometimes in life, holding your nose and doing what you know is wrong is still the best thing for you to do. This happens all the time in business. Wineries have this all the time that come in, and somebody comes in with an ADA case against you. They find one little thing wrong in your winery. They sue you for $250,000. You pay them $10,000, they go away. Is it right?
Yeah, what about the millions we've lost?
They don't, these things happen all the time. So the fact is that you're asking you to risk yourself $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, which there's probably a 50-50 chance that you'll lose. Now, fighting the fight, I love fighting the fight. I love going forward and fighting the fight, but this is not a fight that's worth the fight, in my opinion.
Wow.
Now, to move forward and get other things that are more important done than sitting 2 years in this, costing nothing but money, is, in my view, not worth it. So with that, I will vote to ratify when we come to the time.
Anybody else
Chair,
like?
I just wanted to clarify
Sure.
that point. When the government is sued, and there's an attorney's fees provision, the government is not able to access that
Right.
because that impinges on First Amendment rights. Petitioning the government, filing a lawsuit is actually a petition of the government. So while the other side can get legally their attorney's fees paid at the end of the litigation if they're successful, the government could win, they don't. So all the money they paid to their attorney to win is lost. It doesn't come back from anybody. So it's just, that is what goes into the decision-making when, legislators like yourself decide whether to settle a lawsuit. They have to keep that in mind.
Thank you for that point, because we can't recover our fees if we were to spend the next 2 years in court and spend $500,000 a year. We can't, the county is what you're saying. Okay, anybody else would like to comment on this? Before I call for the vote? You don't have to, I just want to make sure.
It is alarming the amount of concern that has been brought up about this issue. You say that it's common in other counties, but to get this far down the settlement process and then feel as though there isn't a 100% clarity on how this process rolls out and what has happened. There seems to be a lot of, not a lot, but a decent amount of confusion. I'm hesitant to show my support of this process and of this signature until I feel like there can be more legal counsel discussion with our current legal counsel or further legal counsel.
So Jeremy, what questions do you have?
Not now. Not now, council.
I mean, a lot of the questions that have been raised are of concern that have been mentioned today. Specifically, and we discussed this with the invoicing. I'd say that was one area of concern for multiple supervisors was, where's the proof of invoicing that shows and states these hours? And the way it was explained to me was that this is the lesser of two evils. That this is a cheaper way of paying what could become more expensive in the long run. The cannabis community has voiced their, what I would call, pride, that they don't want to feel taken advantage of and pushed around, kind of. Whether or not that's a good strategy for moving this process down and moving the ordinance through, I'm not sure. I don't have the legal experience to know that. So that's where I stand. As far as more specific questions, I'd have to take some time to craft them in a way that would be beneficial, I feel. But with the amount of general concern, I'd say from both sides, it feels like unstable ground to really craft a vote and a strong opinion for myself.
Okay. David, you probably don't know this. This item came up a few times in public discussion about reviewing invoices. You probably don't know if I'm assuming Margaret or Derek received invoices of the opposing attorneys from both Mr. Underwood and Mr. Letton. I'm assuming, but she's not here and you probably don't know.
I can't answer that. This is a mediated settlement.
Right.
So I'm unaware what happened in the mediation, and I'm sure that there was a discussion about that number and why it would be there. But I can't answer that.
Great, thank you. All right, any other further discussions or?
Well, I will say, if we turn this down, which is fine, I understand fighting the fight can be fun sometimes. But
It's not a joke.
I'm not making a joke out of it.
You are.
I hope that we, as a county and you as a community, will be willing to spend the money to fight the fight.
That's only 25% of our annual fees to you, 500 grand.
I made that up, it could be.
I'm just saying.
$500 times 300.
It's coming out of the cannabis fund, so whatever.
It could be 10 grand, it could be
Yeah.
2
We roll it all to one
every
season
anyways, especially in this program, so why not do it against TAA?
So,
Since everybody else is speaking up, I'd clarify a couple of things for the gentleman here.
for which gentleman?
Madam Chair, I'd remind you that there was a motion and a
Correct,
second
Counsel.
on, and this is
You're right,
not.
thank you. Yes, thank you. David, there are some questions I can tell from the board side. Would it have been a little bit more prudent to have that vetted out with the board, you and Margaret perhaps, in closed session before this came out, so the board was clear on some things?
Frankly, I'm feeling that way now. I think that I'm a little hamstrung because I can't
Right.
give you my legal advice about what my recommendation would be at this juncture in the public.
To close doors.
So,
How about don't break the law?
Yeah.
We go to prison if we do.
Legal matters are brought into closed session, so, any legal matter, not just this, we have plenty. So, there are questions that cannot be asked, maybe board members might want to ask that can't do it out here at the moment until they're satisfied with what they see. So I just wanted to see if that was a possibility.
not today.
Yeah, of course, not today because it's not agendized. Okay, with that, any other questions, further discussion before I call for the vote?
Can I offer a subsequent motion?
You may.
A motion to table this item until the next board meeting. So, at least for myself, I can seek some additional legal counsel and legal clarity from our current county council on where we're at and how this will help us proceed forward.
Okay. Do I have a second? All right.
I'll second.
All right. Do we need to bring Supervisor Finley back in so he knows there's a subsequent item?
His statement on the record was he doesn't want anything to do with this. So, yeah, that's right.
Okay. So I have a,
You can change that.
yeah, I just want him aware if he,
They can hear in the lobby.
okay. Is he still out there?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a speaker out there.
Thank you, Justin. So I just want to make sure he's aware of a subsequent item before we move forward. And he can choose to stay out there, but
Wasn't even there before the first
He left before the first motion.
I mean, this is,
Supervisor Finley, I just want to make sure you're aware that there's been a couple motions and you can choose to stay out, but I just want to make sure you're aware.
What's the motion?
We had one motion to ratify the signature. The subsequent item is to table it, I believe.
Okay, sounds spineless.
Okay.
I'll wait outside.
Okay, so I have, just want to make sure he had a choice.
As you run out the door.
You said you made the comments you made, though. That's more spine than what you put up there.
at least you have the courage to say no.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to table this, if I recall correctly. All right. So, do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Groves.
For the subsequent?
This is for the subsequent motion.
Supervisor Groves.
No.
Supervisor Brown.
Aye.
Supervisor Chadwick.
No.
Supervisor Morris.
No. All right. So we're back to our original motion. Any other further discussion on the original? No? All right. Call for the vote.
Supervisor Chadwick.
My vote remains the same, no.
Supervisor Groves.
Yes.
Supervisor Brown.
No.
Supervisor Morris.
Yes.
Aye.
So council, will you please explain the ties of this?
The majority view, basically the ratification of the chair's signature failed. So the county is not authorized to signature on this document. Which raises a lot of issues, and I would request the board set a closed session to discuss those issues with their legal counsel at the next meeting.
Yes, let's please put that on the agenda, Tina.
Number one item.
All right, so with that,
Supervisor Finley, you can come back in. I thought they said there was.
There was earlier.
all right. Well, we'll start at the end. We're moving on to reports. Reports from department heads. You're welcome. Tim, I have Shannon first. That's all right.
Good afternoon, Shannon White, Clerk Recorder Assessor with Elections. I just wanted to report that our property tax system is up and running, our notified system. Learning curve, so we're in the training process there, but we are up and running, so that's done. Our elections system, our tabulation system, has been delivered. We had our acceptance testing in August, and training is scheduled for later this month. I don't usually address comments from the public, but I think I will today. There was a comment about where's the November election. Back in March, it was brought in front of the board to move the odd year elections to even numbered years based on state law and resolutions received by the special districts and the school districts. So that's why there's no November election. I'd also like to address another comment that was made, that the county drags on lawsuits. I don't know anything about this TAA lawsuit. I do know about the lawsuits against elections. And the county has not drug on anything with the elections lawsuits. It is the complete opposite. The plaintiffs in that lawsuit have fired their counsel, challenged the judges. Is this out of place?
I think you're getting close.
Is it an ongoing case?
Yes.
Then we might
Okay.
probably should talk about it, but that is public record
Okay.
for the courts. Everything you
Everything I'm
stated
saying
is
would be
public
public
record.
record,
Yes.
absolutely. So I'll just leave it at that then, so I don't cross any lines, but it has not been the county that has drug on the elections lawsuits.
Thank
That's
you.
all I have today.
And just for another clarification on the changing of the November election to in 2020, we did address that like in this March or April.
It was in
Right?
March, yes.
Okay.
It was brought before the board.
Right, so thank you for that reminder.
In fact, if I, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Bobby, I didn't see this.
That's okay. I'm just curious, if we got the new machines and...
The election stuff? Yes.
Is that what you're talking about, the testing?
Yes, we had acceptance testing, so before equipment before the vendor leaves, we do testing on every machine to make sure it's working properly. So that acceptance testing was done in August, and then later this month, we're going to have training on the system itself.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Jen?
I was just going to recall you received praise from Mr. Weir for changing those dates, am I correct? Correct. So he was very appreciative of that.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
No worries, Jen.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Tim Rogers, Chief Probation Officer for the record. Just wanted to let the board know that we had a pretty good day yesterday at probation. Got notification of 2 grant awards. One $500,000 grant from Bureau of Justice Assistance for a county drug court program. And we also got notice of a $297,000 continuation of Prop 56 fund grant. I have to apologize to the Budget Committee. I didn't anticipate additional revenue coming in this fiscal year. The drug court grant funds did not look as if they were going to be coming through, so I was pleasantly surprised on that one. And the $297,000 from Prop 56, which is California DOJ. We won't see that in our revenues until fiscal year 2021. So, and then we also got one additional small micro grant for $4,300 from BSCC for mental health training funds as well. So, all in all, it was a very good day. Got notice of both those yesterday, so kind of made for a good Monday, which Mondays usually are never that good. So.
Can you speak briefly to what those grants will allow your department to
Sure.
do?
I'll start with the mental health training grant. So that micro grant is specifically designed for law enforcement to receive specialized training in dealing with mentally ill individuals. There is a pretty broad definition of the training that can go into that. We're looking at a combination of crisis intervention training as well as deeper level training for our staff working with adults in our day reporting center and other functions. The Bureau of Justice Assistance federal government drug court program originally was designed to work hand in hand with our Prop 47 BSCC grant. That was originally designed as a mental health diversion program. Unfortunately, we did not get the funding through the state for the mental health diversion program. So we're going to have to make some adjustments in the actual drug court application side of it with these additional funds. Originally, or the plan right now is to, again, combine that with the day reporting center, perform the treatment counseling functions at the day reporting center, and then also have monthly court hearings for that population. Right now, we're tentatively looking at that as a post-plea program as opposed to a diversionary program, so it would be a deferred judgment program. That's a 4-year, 48-month-long program. Again, we're really hoping that we can bring this additional piece online at some point in this 48 months with the mental health diversion piece over as well. And then lastly, with the Prop 56 funds, those are the tobacco grant funds. That is currently fully funding our school-based intervention officer, the school squad program, as most people know it is. That will fully fund the program through 2023. And I've also notified Mountain Communities, Trinity Alps Unified, and TCOE that the MOU that we currently had in place for them to offer partial funding or half funding for that position starting in the 2020-2021 fiscal year, that we can push that back to 2023. So, of course, Superintendent Green was very happy to hear that for obvious reasons. They've got a lot of other expenses that they're looking at this year with the mold issue. So anything that can defer some extra costs for them is appreciated. Same thing with Superintendent Miller and paid for.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you for all the work to get that. Thank you, and to your team. Any other department head?
Kim Hunter, Building and Planning Director. I just wanted to report that we did have, I believe, a productive meeting last Thursday with the Planning Commission in Hayfork. There was excellent turnout. The whole intent of that meeting was to get feedback and input from the public on the draft EIR for cannabis cultivation program, and we achieved that. Great comments. And that's what that was about. So about 75 people, again, good turnout, but since that has been brought up several times this morning, that I just report and answer any questions, or if you had any additional comments on that topic.
My commissioner said he appreciated the meeting, that thought it would be useful that when it comes to the board to have a joint meeting so they could watch the interaction with the board. I don't know if that's something that the board would be willing, obviously that's a discussion we can have later, but I would not be opposed to that. That would be a good idea. And I'll even know if the board needs approval, I don't know if that needs to come through the board, how that works, but.
Discuss that with the chair and CIO. Right.
Supervisor Brown.
Will there be like a summary of comments or a staff report kind of outlining what was discussed and the main concerns and everything?
Yes, absolutely. There will be, and that is why I'm not, the suggestion about the joint meeting and also the time it takes to assemble those comments. We're still kind of trying to pin down a date on when that similar meeting will come to the Board of Supervisors. I'm thinking it probably won't be October 16th.
You had mentioned that.
Right. So that will definitely, we'll do the same outreach and get that word out when that date is determined. But yes, good comments. We took, as the speakers came up, we had somebody on the computer with the screen typing things, you know, in real time. Took quite a crew down there to make sure we had You know, a lot of folks tracking what was said and responding when we could. So
There's still
yes,
two
there
more?
will be a summary and a staff report.
There's still 2 more meetings?
Yeah, let me go into that process a little bit. Now, these the meeting in Hayfork and the meeting that will become before the board, date to be determined, these are above and beyond. These are not required of the CEQA EIR process. This is solely to just take a step back and get feedback from the community. So these are not public hearings. And so once the ER does move forward, we're kind of at a standstill right now between the draft and the final. So when we do get to the final and the release of the final draft EIR, then the public hearings will start following that comment and review period. So that will be the consideration, the action, the public hearings, those later. Now this Hayfork meeting and the next meeting with the board are just above and beyond input.
Thank you.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
Supervisor Henry, then
I want to give you a little nudge or a shove, a little off topic, still what you were just discussing, but still in your agency, Southern Trinity Health Services, their project going on. You shove here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Keep
you.
it at the top of your list.
Okay.
Right, Thanks.
It is a very long list, but I will
I know.
definitely do that.
I know, thank you.
Supervisor Burns?
Yeah, so we had a question today on when the comments and responses will be available to the public.
Right, and that in the EIR process is when the final EIR is released.
Okay, so we'll have the meeting with supervisors, and then you'll go back, and then when it goes to the planning commission in the public hearing format, it'll be there.
It will be there, it'll be released before that. And there'll be a period of time. It's not, with the final EIR, you don't have the 45-day comment period like you do with the draft. By law, it only has to be 10 days review. It's not a comment period, it's just a review period. And so that will be released. It can be more than 10 days, but that's by law what's required. So as we go into that, there'll be time for people to review that before the public hearings.
To make comments on the comments.
To make comments on the comments, essentially, yes.
And a couple meetings ago, totally non-cannabis item, we had a member from the public requesting he came up from Shasta County on some mining issue. Do you remember that? And he wanted a letter of support to reduce some fees. That's it, yes. And I think we tasked you and Richard to kind of look into that and bring something back. So it was waiving yes, you're right, a $75 fee.
Yeah, that would be the SB2 recording fee for affordable housing.
Right, so you guys could just work on that.
Thank you for the reminder on that.
And brief us on where we're at next time.
Sounds good.
Great. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Shelley Nelson, HR Director. I just wanted to announce that we had a very successful employee health fair last week, and I really wanted to recognize employees from Human Resources, Risk Management, Public Health, and General Services who really dedicate a lot of long hours preparing, organizing for that to go off. We had an increase in attendance from 70 to 109 employees this year, which I think is fantastic. Public Health was administering flu shots to our employees. Trinity Hospital was there. They had a great booth where they were providing diabetes screening tests, as well as strength measuring tests and blood pressure, which was a little alarming for myself to go through, but it was eye-opening, and that's what it was all about. And open enrollment is actually going to be closing this Friday, October 4th, so I just wanted to put that out there as well, where employees can sign up for new health benefit insurance programs or make changes.
Thank you.
morning, Madam Chair and Board. Letty Garza, Director for Health and Human Services and OES. I just have a few things to report to you. First, good news item is we're notified that Cal OES has awarded the Northern Valley Catholic Social Services program to manage an emergency preparedness campaign for Trinity County. I did forward the award letter to the clerk of the board to send to you. In addition to that, they will be recruiting for 2 positions for emergency preparedness person to work closely with our OES department. So in that scope of the award, the areas that they will be focusing on, which I was really pleased to see, is that there's funding for empowering our CBO. As you know, HRN did an amazing job during the Helena fire and helping us with the residents that were affected, along with our great local service clubs. So there'll be funding for that. The other area that was a real challenge for us was providing animal shelter as families were evacuated, especially from the car fire. Having in place and staged at the Valley Park was a challenge. So understanding how that funding can support that is going to be really interesting. The other area is to build community teams trained in emergency preparedness and response, as well as build a public awareness campaign. So I have scheduled a meeting with Northern Valley Catholic Social Services next week to kind of go through the logistics of the award, just to understand what their plans are and how we can assist with them. So I thought you'd be happy to please to hear that.
Is it more about like an educational campaign for folks to get prepared?
You know, it's funny, they're calling it the Education Initiative, but the award letter is actually calling it the Listos, California is the name on how they branded it. So I'm not sure why they're different, but it is for the focus of preparedness. So I'm excited about that. The other information I wanted to share with you that I just recently heard from our fiscal manager. As you remember, the Helena fire happened in August 30th through November 15th of 2017. We did receive full, well, I won't say full reimbursement, but we did get reimbursement for all the departments that were involved. As you know, claiming expenditures for any incident, we are only eligible up to 75% of what we claim. So we did just finish receiving all of those reimbursements. So I thought you wanted to know that. So it tends to come as a 2-year cycle for reimbursement. That FEMA goes through a real fine audit of our expenditures, and right now we are working with them for our car fire expenditures. As Shelley mentioned, our public health department has started the flu vaccination campaign, and they did provide the schedule for all of the schools in Trinity County, and they are starting in the mid-October through November. So they are reaching out to all the parents to just inform them that they will be available in the schools, because that has been something requested, and it also helps with the attendance issue during flu season. So with that, that's all I have at the moment, and if you have any questions, I'm here.
All right, thank you for the update. Okay.
Just real quick, I know you were present during the presentation, but during the presentation, your name was mentioned multiple times. And for those in the audience that don't know, you are the recipient of those adulations. So thank you for representing Trinity County.
Thank you. And I do really want to give credit to Behavioral Health, too. They are another strong member representing our county with partnership. Partnership is an amazing managed care. We are one of the counties that is lucky to have them as a managed care. I know there's other counties, mid to southern, that are trying to get in with partnership. There's some issues there with their contracts, but yeah, I appreciate that, and it is a pleasure to work with them too. Thank you.
All right, any other department head? All right, moving on to CAO.
Nothing to report.
Our guest attorney, would you like to say anything for this exciting day so far? Okay, moving on to board members. Supervisor Chadwick.
On September 17th, LAFCO met, and we had a quorum, and it was a green light for the project for the ambulance, the Trinity Life Support going forward. On September 24th through the 27th, I was fortunate enough to be able to attend the Rural California representing counties with Dr. Coons and Supervisor Brown. I've been to several of the RCRCs now. I feel like this was by far the best speakers. The networking that went on, it was just incredible. And kudos to Supervisor Brown for providing and I know everybody participated in that, but the basket. And it was our former CAO that bought it, Wendy Tyler, for those who don't know. On September 28th, the NorCal EMS hosted a specific banquet for the departure of Dr. Rudnick, who is overseen in his capacity for 15 years. So it was wonderful to do that. And a quick update regarding the raid on Howard Vang's store in Hayfort on late July. The FBI has still been non-responsive.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Burrows?
Yeah, on the 25th, Lewiston had their groundbreaking for their new sewage plant. It was attended by the press and all the movers and shakers of Lewiston who put hard work into that. And then on the 23rd, 24th, I was in the bunker at Keswick. If you didn't know there was a bunker in Keswick, but there is. This was for TMC and the refinements program. So this was a closed meeting to discuss how the restructuring of the TMC should or if it will go on. I did use all my persuasives, which is not a word that I just made up, but to have those meetings public in the future so the public can weigh in and at least watch the process of the direction for the TMC to go. This is going to be a long process that I think it's very tedious, but I think it's very important that the public try to participate because there's a lot of controversy in the river and a lot of importance for the river in the county that this program get it right in the future. And that's all I have to report.
No out of county travel?
And get sick to it?
Nope. Nope. I didn't go to the nutrition.
Oh, that's what it was, right.
Yeah.
Supervisor Brown?
I'm missing the date exactly, but I attended the STAG transportation meeting. The main takeaway from that was there's a declining use in our local transportation. So if anyone has any good ideas of what could be offered differently from the transportation to better utilize our system, please bring any ideas to the board or the transportation department so we can keep having that service available for people that need it. Went to the RCRC meeting last week from Tuesday until Friday. I want to give a big thanks to all of the donors of the county basket. I kind of want to go down the list, so I will. Tammy's Bookstore donated some books about Trinity County history and gold mining. The golf course in town donated a round of golf. The art shop in Hayfort donated some local art, as did, I might pronounce it wrong, but Mikla Yant and Ryan and Lisa Howe that donated art. The little jewelry store at the end of town in Weaverville donated a gift certificate. Bigfoot rafting, Six Rivers rafting, and Steel Bridge rafting all donated anywhere from half day to full day, 1-person to 6-person rafting trips. The Hayfort Quilters had a quilt in the basket that was very much appreciated. New York Saloon donated some shirts and bottles of wine. Alpine Cellars donated some bottles of wine, especially the State of Jefferson bottle. Everyone likes that. Meredith Do It Best donated the 20-piece tool set. The Trinity Lake Marina, which is under new ownership, they were very generous and donated 2 half-day jet ski rentals. The PUD and Paul Hauser donated a tour of the Trinity Dam and the hydro plant, so hopefully it's still valid. Straw Bale House donated some coffee and a mug. We had elderberry juice, honey from Duncan McIntosh, some glass art from Roz and Sawyer, and Elsa in Hayfork built the wooden crate. And it was great. We had a really nice display. The value of our basket was set at $3,000. I think we raised $1,500 for it, and all the proceeds for all of the baskets from the 38 counties went to Inyo County charities. I think it was 3 or 4 charities in Inyo County. So it rotates annually. If someone from Trinity County gets lucky enough to become the chair, Trinity County will be the receiving party, and we get to choose which charities. So we raised $61,000 in 3 hours, and that was pretty impressive. It was the most they had raised before. A lot of wine was involved with the baskets. But it was really nice to see that, I'm still learning about what RCRC does and how these big organizations and lobbyist groups work. And it was nice to see kind of the full circle from going around to the different stores and asking the other supervisors to go around and ask their businesses in their districts to provide whatever they could. It all added up to a lot, and it goes a long ways. And Matt Kingsley of Inyo County was very appreciative and touched by the generosity of everyone on all those baskets, and it was a good time. This was the winner of the photo contest from RCRC from last year. Every year they do a photo contest, and it goes into their little publication. So next year I'll hopefully be reminding you, if you want to submit a photo for Trinity County, a cannabis grower could try it, and we can see if we get put in. But it goes into the thing, and all the people from all the counties get to see it, and it's this lovely little packet. There were some amazing speakers at the event. I'm hesitant to go into detail because I've already shared so much detail. But key takeaways, a great Rob Curley is the editor of the Spokesman Review, which is the newspaper in Spokane. They are, I guess, the only newspaper in the country that's been able to hire more journalists. All of the other big newspapers are just conglomerates owned by hedge funds. And they've, I think, removed 2,600 journalists from their positions in the last year. So the journalism thing's a changing thing there. We're really lucky to have our local journal, and I look forward to finding ways of working with the journal to promote our community building that is vital for us right now. Another great presentation was the author of 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. He does consulting for communities around the country and from Canada. And just to briefly, it's all with sarcasm, so if you want to kill your community, you forget the water, you don't attract business, you don't engage youth, you deceive yourself, you shop elsewhere, you don't paint, you don't cooperate, you live in the past, you shut out your seniors, you reject everything new, you ignore outsiders, you grow complacent, and you don't take responsibility. So we're well on our way. This book is hopefully some inspiration. The author wrote a little note in here for Trinity County. It says, author wrote in a little note, says, to Trinity County, there's always a way to success. So we got a little Bible working forward. And we had Fiona Ma, the treasurer, was there, and Kim Bond from the USDA was there. They both have some what seemed like appealing and promising programs that the county may be able to utilize. Lots of lending programs. The USDA in Trinity County, in the past, they did a $1.2 million water and waste grant for the Lewiston Community Service. So that improvement has happened. 2 community facility grants for $34,000 were acquired for the Hawkins Bar Fire Department for new emergency equipment. and $15,000 Rural Energy for America program grant was invested in Camp Trinity in Hayfork. And I think that was to put up solar panels. So it was great to see that there are resources out there. Some we're taking advantage of, and I think there's others that we can better take advantage of. As far as formal updates from our CRC, things I thought that were pertinent about forest management and wildlife fire. They are still working on the homeowners insurance availability and affordability problem. Insurance rates have gone up by about 10% in the high fire impacted areas, and our CRC is working to find ways of making it so that it's fair and that the insurance companies can't just do exactly what they want. Also extending the notice of renewal. That's been a reoccurring problem. They do these quick notice of renewals in 30 days. So they're extending that to be a 75-day process so people don't get their insurance policies pulled out from under them. The governor signed a couple deals with some new wildfire prediction companies that are going to put up fancy remote sensors and computers and stuff to try to detect fires as they're happening or before they happen. Couple other things that I think are important. I'm sure people saw that cannabis banking made its way a step further at the federal level. So there's another step before that comes to fruition, but it's moving its way. PILT taxes, they are still working on that. 514 million PILT funds will be issued. Some of it already has, and some more needs to be. So to me, it sounds like the counties have to stay up on the feds to get the PILT money, and if you don't, they just won't pay you. So a lot of county supervisors were in DC getting the PILT a couple weeks ago, and so that's on its way still. The waters of the United States, the WOTUS, the Trump administration has been changing and wants to change some of the Clean Water Act stuff with WOTUS. If it does go through, there'll be litigation from environmentalists, and it'll go back and forth. So nothing's actually going to change anytime soon with the water stuff. Secure rural schools. There is a bill to make the program permanent instead of expiring here shortly. This would extend it until 2020. So more funds for the schools. The rural broadband, they're looking at ways of determining where there is not good broadband. The Forestry and Wildlife reports that and I think I reported on it last time, that the current administration is working on lowering the NEPA process dramatically so that it won't take 200 something days, but might take more like 20 to 30 days. And that would help with a lot of the wildfire management projects that get put on hold because of these long processes. And I believe that was it. I know that's kind of boring, but there are some good bills that are in the pipeline. McGuire has some good bills about more wildfire mitigation and notifications from utility companies and phone companies, communications companies. When they know that the fire's coming, that they will notify before they turn off their services. So that's kind of a big issue. Transportation, there's a bill that would allow for road funds for cattle guards. So I don't know if there are any areas in Trinity County that could use some state-sponsored cattle guards, but that is an opportunity down the line. And there's one other thing that they're looking into, the Williamson Act being eligible for cannabis growers. So I thought that was neat and valuable to some Trinity County residents. And
They're still not funding it though?
No, they're not.
not yet, but it's the discussion's there. That's pretty much it. I can get into more detail with any of those things outside of this meeting if anybody's interested.
All right. And what did our basket raise, by the way, did you say?
We raised about $1,500.
All right.
I was a little disappointed. We were the second to last basket, and it had been really chaotic. Someone got a puppy for $6,000. That was the highlight. And they didn't, next year I'll auction our own basket because they didn't really do it justice on the auctioneering side of it. With all those rafting trips, we should have gotten a little bit more for it.
Yeah, Humboldt really tries to outshine everybody.
They're going down.
And Humboldt does usually have some cannabis in it, so.
There was no cannabis this year. We were close. Next year, I think it's a guarantee.
Step up.
Okay, not to end the reports on a sad note, but I'm just going to take the wind out of everybody's sails. As you know, this board, whether it's Supervisor Friendly and myself, now currently Supervisor Brown and myself, attend the Trinity County Collaborative Group for the last few years. They've done some great work with the various grant funds that we were awarded. We will hear some of those projects in a couple weeks on what's going to happen with the recent award of money. However, we lost District Ranger Dan Dill out of Six Rivers. He was quite an active component in the Trinity County Collaborative. He was able to get work done and satisfy both sides of the issues. And I just wanted to acknowledge that his efforts certainly have helped Trinity County over the many years, and acknowledge him and his passing. So condolences to his staff, friends, family, and constituents that he served. I don't know, Supervisor Finley, if you wanted to add any more words to that.
Nope,
Okay.
he had his memorial Saturday.
Right.
Fortunately.
And then Air Quality Board, where I got the hint of the chocolate lab puppy that was going to get auctioned off at NCRC. We agreed to, receive extra funding from the State Resource Board, and we decided to take that funding to offset the air quality fees for those who want to do prescribed burning in the Humboldt, Trinity, and Del Norte. That's who we serve at the moment. That would be open to the RCDs, the CAL FIRES, who do prescribed burning that require a smoke management plan. You could apply to a waiver for the air quality fees to be waived. We also extended that invitation to both federal agencies and timber companies. We know that helps with some fire risk and mitigation, so we thought as the Air Quality Board, we'd try to help wherever we can on that. So, and then as chair of the NCRP, I spent 20 hours trying to get to this meeting on Friday to present our efforts over the years of NCRP to a group, as we were awarded another $4 million for our efforts as some project pilot that will serve the 7 counties that are involved in NCRP. Of course, the insurance issue came up. It's affecting every county almost who's been through a fire. So you're hearing, especially those counties in the Sierras where those counties that were designated by CAL FIRE as high-risk fire, those residents in those counties are certainly getting their home insurance canceled. I've received, I don't know about board members here, but quite a few calls on that, panicked calls about fearful that we would lose our home insurance as well. We are not, interesting enough, part of that high risk. I think there were 35 counties that came out a year ago that CAL FIRE designated as those counties, so we are not part of that 35, and although that doesn't mean certain insurance companies aren't writing home policies. So it was explained to me by the insurance representative from the state insurance office that there's a kind of a quotient or quota of certain companies will write certain policies in your county. So if a certain company is not writing a home insurance company doesn't mean there aren't other insurance companies to write that home policy. I've received quite a few calls on that and concerns. So there's a little difference of policy going on. Those counties that were part of the high risk 35 and those who just, certain agents have saturated their market and won't write any more home policies. I do have a list of other agencies that will write home policies, and I meant to bring it, I forgot. Also, just want to remind everybody that, of course, Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day is this October 5th in Hayfork and Weaverville, and from 9 to 2 this Saturday. All right, with that, we will move on to the ad hoc committee reports. Commercial cannabis ordinance. Keith?
No, the staff has been putting together some administrative changes they'd like to see, but no great action going on.
Yeah, so we've, if you've heard us talk about, we've been in limbo while the EIR is kind of going through its process. We've looked at some administrative cleanup that could get done, and staff has brought us some of their ideas of what they have seen over the last year, what we could clarify, clean up, that is non-land use, so we would look at that. Federal lands legislation?
I have nothing new.
Nothing new to report, but I would like to get together and maybe we can organize some form of meeting, either public or private, where we can invite some of the Forest Service, something kind of like the collaborative, but with not as many people. I feel like one of the things at the collaborative is there's so many people, it becomes hard to focus on any of the details of the issue. So regarding specifically Huffman's bill, if you could help and we could put together a list of people that we thought would be good players to kind of have a more intimate sit down and get some more.
I'm more than happy to do that and work with you on that. But I will advise that my understanding is no federal agency can participate in an active bill.
That's right.
They can't share an opinion?
No.
Well, then outside of those agencies.
Right. And I'm not sure, if the state agencies would, but they might. And I will say that Bobby was going to, Supervisor Chadwick was going to, she talked about having some meetings in the Hayfork area independently just to get what your constituents are thinking.
Yeah, I still want to do that, and I spoke with Madam Chair Morris about the updated maps. I still am waiting on those.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, we'll meet on that.
And Supervisor Chadwick and Supervisor Brown, the retail cannabis. Yeah.
As reported previously, we have met with the department head and Kim and have shared our hope for the timeline, and she seems to be on board. I believe that she's going forward with the information she has. So basically right now it's at the staff level.
Okay, great. All right, does anyone need a break before we?
Yes,
please.
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Oh, you do?
Well, you got
Go ahead.
all this stuff. Okay. Moving on to county matters. These items include non-routine or controversial matters and listed alphabetically by department. A member of the board or staff may request that an item be heard out of order. Which I'm going to do. I'm going to move up 4.2 and 4.3 so we can have some staff and we to get going. So, item 4.2, adopt a resolution which adopts the final budget for fiscal year 2019-2020.
Yes, I may ask Susie to come up and if there's any questions about clarity, but essentially this is the budget that was presented to the board on September 10th with only one modification by direction that was given on the 17th. Otherwise, it's the exact budget that the board was presented.
With these, a few add-ons is what.
Yes, on the
discussed.
17th. One concerning vehicles for victim witness.
Okay, I meant to ask you during your board report, but I can ask it here. We didn't talk about at our during the budget hearing, and this is just an aside, but it could help the budget. Since we do have a cannabis program, there are funds to help enforce those who aren't licensed. And I don't know if you've had a discussion yet with the sheriff on that or not. Or
depends on what you're referring to. There's several different programs, one with the DA and some with the sheriff, and funding out there for it. So yes.
yeah, I think it's through the state program that those counties who have a program are eligible for this funding. So I just wanted to put that bug in your ear. That would help for those who aren't licensed.
Okay.
And the sheriff's department and who else is involved, so. Okay, any other questions, comments on this? Susie, did you have anything you'd like to add? No? All right, any questions, comments from the public?
Hello, Board. Name's Larry Winter. Hi, Tom. I was at the last budget hearing that you had, and I didn't get up to speak, and I should have, so I'm speaking now. My question is about the general plan funding coming from the cannabis department, is what I'm assuming, what the numbers that I read. And I know I pay for my variance into the general plan update every single year, and that is, I guess my question is, what appears to be that the cannabis funding is funding the whole general plan update. Or can you tell me if there's a percentage, or how much of that money is coming from the cannabis program? My point being is that I've been paying every year to update the general plan with my variance, and I'm assuming my permits are going to administering the program, and so far I've paid a lot less than a lot of other people are paying. And so what I'm going to assume is that cannabis funds have been fiscally beneficial to the county, Citizen John Finley, because there seems to be a perception that the cannabis fund isn't helping the county besides administering the program. And so I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Did you want your question answered?
Yes.
These numbers will not be exact, but they're relatively close. There's probably a little over $1 million in the general plan update fund. Of that, probably around 85% has been derived from cannabis. As this fall, hopefully, I think high on Ms. Hunter's list to do before the first of the year is to send an RFP out to start that process and get this moving forward. Those CAN funds have been kept separate, and that is definitely, in my view, a benefit to the county to have a general plan that is not out of the 70s.
And so how does that, how has the money I've spent just been to administer the cannabis program that has now gone into the general plan updates?
No, they're two different funds. You pay $1,000, depending on the size of your license. I don't know what license you have, but in the larger license, you pay $1,000 that goes just to the general fund, and that has just been building up in the savings account. And the fees, the other fees have gone to planning and code enforcement staff.
There is a separate fee.
But that
When
fee
you
would,
purchase your license, there's a separate fee that simply goes into general fund. Everything else stays in cannabis.
right, so, but it's coming from cannabis growers then. Let me put it that way. If it's not, I'm not paying that fee unless I'm growing cannabis.
No, you pay that fee for everything that you do in county planning. There is a general plan update fee when you do a lot line adjustment, when you do a subdivision, when you do everything.
Variance, as you
So an
stated.
annual variance that, okay, so,
So everybody pays, it's just that cannabis has had the financial activity in it.
they're shouldering most of the
Yes,
weight
they
of
are,
that.
but they've also had the greatest cause to have a general fund. And that's a discussion we can have offline.
All right, thanks for your answer.
Okay, on the budget, any other questions?
Yes, John Brower from Junction City, and I'd like to request again that we get a visual aid to describe funds that are being spent out of the cannabis funds. So when we decide to, or the supervisors decide to spend money, say on enforcement or legal counsel or a consultant to prepare an EIR or anything, it would be very helpful to everybody to just have a simple chart. It could be a pie chart or different ways to describe it visually. But I think that'd be very helpful to everybody. And it seems that when I read the budget, and it's the first budget I've really gotten into, I'm not sure if I was reading it right, but it seems that the cannabis funds have been depleted entirely at this point. It seems like we could avoid that scenario in the future by knowing how big the apple is and what size of bites we're taking as we bite them. Thank you.
May I answer that?
Follow up.
If you don't follow up with it all.
Okay, so the last meeting, when we actually got into the nuts and bolts, we didn't get one question on cannabis, where I did point out that we are now eating into the reserves of cannabis, and this year we're eating in about $1 million. That will leave us about $400,000. Some of those are one-time hits, so as in the EIR and any legal action that takes. But at this point, I'm trying to hold back my frustration of this conversation when you asked the question the week before, the meeting before, and asked the question the meeting after, and didn't ask the question when we had the meeting.
Yeah, I didn't make that meeting.
I understand.
And John, I would further add that, I'm happy to sit down. I think I made the offer before with you or anybody in the public that wants a question on the budget explained, particularly this issue, so we can.
That'd be great, thank you.
Just let me know.
Okay, so we've heard the cannabis fund is depleted. Okay, is that true?
No.
Susie's right out here. This is what I'm questioning.
Good afternoon. Sue Hawkins, Business Manager at my office. As Supervisor Groves stated, we do have approximately $1.4 million fund balance as of June 30th in the Cannabis Department. The budget for 1920 does use approximately $1 million of that, which would leave us with $400,000 in fund balance at the end of 1920 if all of our revenues come in as projected and all of our expenditures go out as projected. And that's going to
So as
vary.
been pointed out, it's not necessarily depleted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And as we pointed out last meeting on this discussion, a lot of them, and Supervisor Groves pointed out, a lot of it's startup costs to the program. So we anticipate those evening out as well. So, all right, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board, Tom Belenko, Douglas City.
I just want to make sure, I think I understand that of this $130-some-odd million budget, only less than 10% of it is actually discretionary spending by the board. And if that is the case, and one of the cannabis taxes that hopefully make the ballot passes, does that go into discretionary spending? So do we stand to say, let's say cannabis taxes raise $3 million, does that go into our discretionary spending, so now we have more, or does it go into just the kind of other stuff?
If Supervisor Groves,
You're better to tell us than us, because where does your plan put it, and I don't want to get into discussion of your plan. I will let Supervisor Finley talk about it.
It's up to you to decide where you wish the money to go, whether it goes into general fund
So
or
assume
whether...
general fund, is that discretionary?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah.
So, you know, we've always been in favor of a tax. There hopefully will be two options. We have to oppose one of them, but people who aren't in the industry don't have to oppose either. They can vote in favor of both. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments on the budget?
Larry Winterheim, I'd just like to clarify from that last speaker, vote that goes up to, on the ballot, tax that goes to a vote, if you go with a 50% plus one, it goes into the general fund. You can't direct that money to go anywhere else. You can advise, but you can't tell you how to spend that money based on a 50% plus one vote. Now, 2/3 vote, you can dedicate it.
So we're getting a little off track of the budget itself, so I think we can talk
I just wanted to
offline, Larry.
clarify that you can't direct
That's
where
correct.
that money goes unless.
It's designated, we're not, right?
Correct.
Okay, anybody else? All right, moving it back to, yeah. I'm bringing it back to the board now, okay. Did I miss
Motion to approve 2.1 as presented. I'm sorry, 4.2. I need glasses.
The 4.2, do I have a second?
Second.
All right,
I will watch in a second.
Tina?
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Supervisor Benjamin?
Aye.
Supervisor Groves?
Aye.
Supervisor Chao?
Aye.
Supervisor Morrison?
Yes. And then, moving on to, I'm gonna come back to 4.1, but I know I have a department sitting here for 4.3. Modify the departmental allocation list for Health and Human Services Department, Veteran Services Division, changing 0.5 Veteran Service Officer to 0.6 Veteran Services Officer, and charging the salary range from N172 to N221 effective October 1st, 2019. Approximate cost and salary and benefits for a veteran service officer at salary range N172 at A step is $3,274, and at salary range N221 at A step is $5,001. Good afternoon.
Good morning, or good afternoon, you're right. Shelley Nelson, HR Director. So, as I stated in our staff report, the county has been unsuccessful in recruiting to replace the Veteran Service Officer position for the last 9 months. We've been surveying the position, and then we began evaluating other similar-sized counties, evaluating how the VSO is classified and salaried. Pretty much the different counties that we've surveyed, they are either at a department head level or an upper management level. So we were evaluating the classification job description that we already had. It is listed as an exempt management position, but it is currently assigned to a non-management level salary. So I am requesting that we reassign this from a non-represented general range to a non-represented management salary range, which is what I stated in there. It is a salary range that would be commensurate to other program manager positions within the county based on essential duties, training, experience, and special requirements. We are not at this time looking to request it at the department head level.
Thank you for that clarification. Questions from the board on this item?
Yeah, unless I'm misunderstanding this, You're going from a 0.5 to a 0.6?
Yes, so the department would like to increase the FTE, the full-time equivalent.
Is that due to the work or due to the lack of?
It would be
getting more
due
money?
to the work, yes. Just, it's kind of been teetering, the prior class person that we had was kind of teetering on that level. We
Okay.
just thought we would bring it back to make it whole.
All right. No further questions.
Okay, any more questions from the board? No? Any questions, comments from the public? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it
I'd
back
like
to
to
the
make
board.
a motion that we adopt this resolution for the, I guess it's not a resolution, excuse me, staff's recommendation. I'm looking forward to having a VSO.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, so moved. Thank you. We're getting there. Bear with me. Moving back to 4.1, approve the board's response to the following grand jury reports. Cannabis ordinance development, no fiscal impact. If you recall, we tabled this for further discussion. David, for the public's sake and maybe a new board member or two on the grand jury's role, could you briefly explain that in their advice capacity?
Yeah, the grand jury is charged under the penal code with the authority to investigate public entities within their jurisdiction. For instance, if there were cities in Trinity County, they can do the cities, they do special districts, they do the county. And then they make recommendations to the governing bodies. The recommendations may either be accepted, modified, but there must be a response to those by the legislative body, in this case you folks, and you have to respond to the grand jury and tell them what you're going to do. But so it's a recommendation acceptance process, and sometimes legislative bodies accept the recommendation, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they look further and modify it.
Mhm. All right, thank you for that. It's been a while, I think, since we had for some. Any questions, comments before I? Oh, sorry. Guess there is.
So what if the board can't come up with an agreement
You mean
to a response?
It becomes very difficult because the law requires you to respond in some manner. I assume that if you can't come to a consensus on a response, that would have to be your response.
Nothing? Not that that's ever going to happen.
Because today went so smoothly. All right. Any other questions, comments before I will have to open up back up to the public again? No? All
Did
right.
you want to highlight or anything, or did you?
No, I mean, I'll just, anything is raised, I'll clarify or not. All right, members of the public comment, question?
I have something to say. John Brower from Junction City, just a kid. And many of us in this room are deeply invested in this process that brought our commercial cannabis program to this point. And the Cannabis Ad Hoc Committee that has changed over time and been dissolved and then reformed for other areas of focus, and the new Cannabis Retail Development Ad Hoc Committee. The benefits of the Cannabis Ad Hoc should be obvious to everybody that's been involved. The their ability to, especially starting 4 years ago when this thing got so hot in Trinity County, the Cannabis Ad Hoc's ability to balance the varied interests of the county, the group that became TAA, safe in the environmental community, the grower community that was interested in compliance and permitting, and then everyone else swirling around this tornado, around this controversial subject. The Ad Hoc did a very good job of somehow balancing those interests and coming up with an urgency ordinance and then a permanent ordinance that, while imperfect, and there is room to be improved, but I mean, you did a really good job of balancing all that. And it's a politically charged issue, so politically charged that creating a giant standing committee to guide this process would just never work. They'd never be able to react and adapt and pivot and make quick decisions to make this thing happen. And similarly, to hand this responsibility over to our county planning department would be a mistake. They've got plenty on their plate right now as it stands. And so I would like to see the existing ordinance update ad hoc and legislative ad hoc continue their work, as the existing retail committee. I'd like to see especially the ordinance update ad hoc continue until such point as we have a certified CEQA document and an update to the ordinance to reflect that. That would be really seeing the job through from the point that started to the point where the baton could be handed off to some other type of steering and leadership. But you guys have done a really good job tackling a very difficult subject, and I don't think there's any other means of accomplishing what we've accomplished without this. So I would like to see something else in place prior to the dissolving of the ad hocs that really makes sense and could really continue to bring these benefits to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other comments?
Madam Chair.
Yeah, sure.
The matter before the board is your response to the grand jury.
Mm-hmm.
The issue of ad hoc committees is not on the agenda. I just want to point that out.
You're right. So in terms of, their recommendation is a little different than what I have responded to, so.
Right. Your response is not changing, you're not changing the ad hoc system as it currently exists. That's your response.
Okay.
Just pointing that out.
Thank you.
Supervisor Chair, I would just ask, did you review the meeting that this was discussed with first to understand why John public comment was at? Because on the table, I had agreed with the response from Madam Chair, R2, R3, and I disagreed with R1. I wanted R1 to be the grand jury's response. Supervisor Finley then suggested the discontinuance of all of the matters, and then Supervisor Grove, subsequent, the third one, I believe it was you, suggested that we table it to hear from the cannabis community since it affects them. That's why it was postponed. We would have done it last time. However, Madam Chair had had surgery and we weren't sure if she was going to be there, and since it was her response, it wouldn't have been polite to have this meeting in her absence. So he's actually continuing the conversation from the original meeting. That, just to give you the background, and I think I've covered it, but feel free to.
Yeah, you did perfectly.
Yeah, and the answer to that is no, I didn't have that
Okay.
background. I'm just looking at the recommendation and the response that the county was giving to the grand jury. And I didn't see any change. I think the response is we're staying with our ad hoc committee program.
The grand jury's recommended the disbandment of the current cultivation of cannabis ad hoc. That was their recommendation.
Correct.
My response was slightly different, obviously.
And you can listen to me, I just, if you think this
There
was
were
a
two different
legitimate subject
responses.
matter, that's fine.
Yeah, there were two different responses.
All right, thank you both for clarification and that history. It's important. Sorry.
Hey, Darrell Davis, Junction City. I, in a way, wanted to echo John. I wanted to add, I've had some complaints with the ad hoc standing here plenty of times in the past, but I do think this is not the time to pass off the baton at all. Continue with the EIR to CEQA, but when you do pass it off, I hope that there's some type of committee with cultivators on board, like John or myself. There's a lot of people who want to have input, we've been here, and we would like to be a part of that.
Good comment, thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Rachel. I'm from Hayfork. I have 5 letters for you in regards to our support of the dissolution of all ad hoc committees for Trinity County Cannabis Program and planning departments. The reasons being the inconsistencies between the ordinances and the amendments. There's an example that we wrote regarding just one item that has been changed for every single update, and there are 4 of them. There's also policy in here that lacks clear direction. There's definitions that are missed. There are definitions that don't meet cannabis regulation. There's also policies that violate planning law, such as the 350-foot variance setbacks and opt-outs. I could go into depth on both of those, but they're both listed in here on case law and what codes that they violate for the California governance law. The opt-outs are a little less clear in that you use LAFCO districts to overlay cannabis districts, and they do not meet the conditions of a LAFCO district. There's also things such as high proximity density areas for these opt-outs. However, this is the most 4th least populous state or county in California. So a high density area is something different than, say, San Diego County. So our recommendation is to develop a neutral standing cannabis committee similar to the City of Oakland's framework that would allow community members to have voices. This would be people who are pro-cannabis and anti-cannabis in the same room. And while this may not be a quick process, it may not be as fast as an ad hoc committee, that time that it's going to take to consider things in your programmatic EIR and your ordinances, to take the time and look at not just the applicability, the feasibility, but also the law and which items will work in Trinity County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can you name one of the opt-outs that is a LAFCO district?
Yes. So let's see. We have a fire district. The water districts are the LAFCO districts. So
Which one's the water district?
isn't it Weedville and Hayfork were both water districts?
Hayfork's no longer in it?
Yes, but it was originally included, so it's in this assessment.
Is it your own question?
Yeah, no, I'll be.
All right, thank you.
Jake Wilson, Chris Hayfork, Supervisor Groves. I think it's fantastic that you chose to be polite. Luckily, I'm not in county politics, so I don't have to be polite. When John Brower stepped outside and was like, hey, they're going to talk about this, you should come in and talk, I said, actually, I'm more interested in a cheeseburger. Quite frankly, I'm pretty burnt out on this whole thing. This is the conversation that is being had is kind of a lose-lose. There's no win. This thing has been beaten to a pulp and sucks in every direction. There's always a hotter hell, though. I didn't even know I was going to stand up until the last speaker stood up. There is a short list of places in Trinity County that I won't go. Okay, I'll go to the Pines, go to Mad River, I'll go places people have been murdered. I won't go to the planning department anymore. I won't do it. If the intent of this board, and maybe it is the intent of the grand jury, is to literally destroy licensed cannabis in Trinity County, which is a joke. We can all be on board here. The Trinity Pines is about to dump about $1 billion worth of cannabis onto a black market, and I think there's 3 licenses up there, something like that. That's one corner of this county. So we're already talking about a joke that happens to be our lives. If you guys do something like dump it into, having an ad hoc committee of the 2 districts that kind of have nothing to do with cannabis is kind of like hell. Well, the hotter place of hell is the planning department. So just before you burn this entire thing to the ground, I know that this isn't a perfect solution, having an ad hoc committee. In fact, Keith and I have agreed on almost nothing since the inception of time. Especially trying to give away $100,000 to people they shouldn't. But do not pass it to a worse place. Let's be positive and move forward. The planning department honestly shouldn't even be in charge of anything after what they've done the last 3 years, let alone ask them to give direction to our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, Tom Belenko, Douglas City. As I understand the agenda item, it's about the response to the grand jury report, which I think is fine. It's a response from the board. I don't know if the action item is the ad hoc committee itself, which I believe exists at the pleasure of the chair, in which case, enjoy your decision making. I will speak to the idea of standing committees like members of the community. I think advisory committees are nice. I participated in the Unholy Trinity a few years back that tried to bring different voices together. But that wasn't my start on standing committees. As in reference to the old gray lady, I pulled this issue October 24th, 2007. Marijuana committee forming. Progress towards forming an ad hoc committee that will discuss how to monitor Trinity County's new adopted policy on cultivation of medical marijuana was reported last week. The committee will be headed by Supervisors Roger Yadel and Howard Freeman. Involved will be County Probation Officer, Alcohol and Drug Services, Public Health Nursing Director, Sheriff's Department Representative, County School Superintendent, Hayfork School Principal. Also on the committee will be longtime medical marijuana advocate D.E. Smith of Denny and his attorney, Tom Belenko. And we met for years, and we talked about stuff. I don't think what we came up with was productive. It certainly wasn't fast. And then that committee gave way to another committee that met for years, talked about stuff, and realized we have a lot of different voices. But that's, for better or for worse, the public decision makers in this county are the 5 of you. And anybody who wants to weigh in on it comes to this microphone and weighs in on it here. Anybody can make recommendations to all of you. Anybody can put together ordinances. We can make suggestions, and I encourage all of us to continue doing that. But ultimately, you're the ones who make the decisions, and you're our elected officials, and if enough people don't like your decisions, we unelect you. It's not fast, and it's not perfect, but nothing involving the public is. So I encourage the board to do what the board thinks is best. If the chair likes ad hoc committees, let's keep with it. And let's answer the grand jury and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. No more? All right. Keith, any comments on standing committees? Or are you going to let that one go?
No, we plowed this ground plenty of times. We can try again if you want.
I'm sorry, Tom, I meant to ask you, since you were part of that most recent triangle, and I don't mean the emerald one, but the environmental group, the industry, and TAA, why did that come apart? And I'm sorry to be talking
We
to
stick to the topic of this item.
I do want to know this, because
Yeah,
it's
why don't
important.
we have a presentation from Mr. Belanco at some point?
We could.
Yes?
That's a great.
A nice history lesson.
Yeah, that'd be a great idea. Tom, I can ask you afterwards, but both of you raised the issue, and that is important. All of you were here in public sending us emails of ideas you hate, you didn't like, you loved it. So, and the three groups just haven't been working together in the last year or so, and I forget the reason. But anyway, so you've seen my response. I think the gentleman in the back really summed it up. See this thing through, and then there could be a whole new course. I mean, see it through with the EIR, and then do that. But the point of this whole agenda item is the response, as David pointed out. And you can like some of it.
You ready for a motion?
I would like to hear from my counterpart. No? Okay.
A motion to approve 5.1 as presented.
Second.
Okay, who's getting the second?
Keith can have it.
Keith can have it, they say.
He's second.
I'm going to do a subsequent, but before I do, I'd like to answer a couple things that were said since we get discussion time. Perhaps you haven't read what the grand jury recommended, so I'm going to read it as a small paragraph. The grand jury recommends that the Board of Supervisors dissolve the Cannabis Ad Hoc Committee and establish an open, transparent standing committee by September 2019. The standing committee should include representatives from the Planning Department, District Attorney's Office, Sheriff's Department, and members of the public, including growers and non-growers.
I'm sorry.
Am I going too fast?
No, the look on our DA's office like, more work? Sorry.
The committee must be chaired by a person strong enough to lead meetings to productive conclusions. Deadlines need to be established in order to conduct their business in a timely manner to meet the public's needs. So I think that answers some. As far as Mr. Brower's comments saying that this grand cannabis ad hoc has changed, I would like to remind you that it's been the same two people since established by, who was chair at the time, Carl Fisher, in 2016. There hasn't been a change, including at our county council. We did not have an ag commissioner. We put the single largest legislative paperwork together for Trinity Agriculture without an ag commissioner. So perhaps maybe we need to see if he would like to weigh in. Right now he's not. He's here, he can speak for himself. We also didn't have a planning director. Kim has experience with cannabis. All those other meetings, standing meetings, happened prior to Proposition 64. So Tom, thank you for the history lesson. I really appreciate going back to 2007, but this is 2019. California has changed. I will reiterate what I proposed last time. A combination of the adoption of the recommendation. Recommendation R1, according to the grand jury's report, and accepting Madam Chair Morris's R2 and R3.
That's your motion.
Yes, it is.
Just want to make sure I was hearing that correctly.
You got a second?
All right. So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So basically, David, correct me if I'm wrong, she's proposing the motion to accept my two recommendations or responses and not accept my number one. There was 3 items. Yes. Correct?
Somebody made that motion?
Yes,
I did,
Supervisor
yes.
Chapman.
And it was the same one I made.
And
Previous.
Supervisor Finley.
Right, so. It's your motion second?
Second.
I,
I thought it was.
my motion was seconded.
She
I
did
motioned
second.
Supervisor Chadwick, but Supervisor Chadwick is looking for a standing.
Right.
Well,
Correct.
This is just in response to my report, so it's not changing anything, it's whether she likes my response or not, the way I understood, so. And
So,
Well, Supervisor,
so if it was approved as Bobby's motion, then that would, it wouldn't make the ad hoc have to dissolve within a specific period of time. It would just,
she's just opposing my disagreement, that's my
actually,
understanding.
they recommended that we do this by September 30th, but because of the situation with the surgery, we postponed the meeting to allow Madam Chairwoman Morris to be present, which is the right thing to do. So there was that allowance. So if that helps you understand. There was a time frame. We're outside that time frame as of yesterday.
And this is an advisory, as Attorney Prentice pointed out. Supervisor Groves, sorry.
So, yeah, I want to make clear that no matter what our response is, the chair still has the ability to do it ad hoc if they choose to, is that correct?
This is, well, under county policies, the chair sets that high.
So, I mean, I would recommend, Bobby, since you're up for chair next time, you have plenty of time to try to unwind that during your tenure as chair. It is really shocking to me to try to change the course of this, and all I can really put in my head that this is some backdoor way to try to destroy the program. I just can't go along with that.
And I would further say that you pointed that out last time, that's what it feels like. We are 3/4 of the way down. This transparency issue, I don't understand. These items are all vetted in front of the Planning Commission many times. And then before us, this is where you just witness people able to speak to any item that this board sees. So that is my take too, is to, it would undermine the program in terms of what little bit left we have to do. There, as the gentleman pointed out, there isn't much left to do except get through the EIR, some of the items we wanted to amend, and pretty much I think we see it as will be done. Is that your understanding?
Yes, no, absolutely. When you say 3/4 done, I think we're 95%.
Yeah. So, we've closed off. Sorry, Joe. All right, so I have subsequent and a second.
You have a subsequent and a first. I made a motion.
You made a second or?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so Supervisor Chadwell, would you just repeat your motion, please?
yes, Madam Chair. My motion is that we accept the grand jury's R1 and we accept Madam Chair's R2 and R3 in response to the grand jury's report.
Okay. And I have a second from Supervisor Finley. All in favor? Say aye.
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 Okay, so we'll just, you don't have to agree with my response to number 1, but if, you know, response number 2 and 3.
Can I see a roll call vote, please? I know that's
Okay, sure. Please pull the board.
Supervisor Finley?
Aye.
Supervisor Chadwick?
Aye.
Supervisor Brown?
Aye.
Supervisor Groves?
No.
Supervisor Morris?
No. All right. All right, so that is it for all of you.
So can I make a suggestion to the CAO? So start working with Kim to set together a 15-person committee?
Yes, there's no change. That's what David has said,
I'm
yeah.
asking you to do some investigation.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, I thought you were going down different paths, did John?
15. And I have, well, we're going to follow the GPAC, so, and that's just a starting spot.
I'm not sure if I'll follow up with you after. I'm not sure if I know your question. All right, we are going to go into closed session. That's item 5.1, Government Code Section 54945, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, number of cases 2, Penny versus Finley, Trinity County Superior Court case number 16CV068, Oipia litigation, case number 17-MD-2804. I'm still getting, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just reading them, and then we'll take them by the turn, yeah. 5.2, Government Code Section 54954.5, conference with legal counsel pending litigation, number of cases 1, People versus Fennebach, Trinity County Superior Court case number 91CR083, Solano Court case FCR 332245. Item 5.3, Government Code Section 54956.9, conference with legal counsel, significant exposure to litigation. Number of cases 1, claimant Randall Hography, if I'm saying that right, Hography. Claim number TR192-001, agency claim against Trinity County. Any comments on these closed session items?
Yes, Kay Grace from Lewiston. The people that left behind me who had questions about not reporting out after closed session certainly didn't stay for this, and they aren't going to come back for when you report out later, which is why they don't realize that you report out what you do report out on a regular basis, which is direction given to staff, but you don't say what it is, etc. But my point for this comment has to do with 5.1 specifically, Penny versus Finley. Since I don't know why you're discussing a case that's done, because this case is no longer in Trinity County Superior Court, it's moved on to the appellate court, and you don't have the appellate court number. I'm not sure exactly what you're doing in closed session, and I won't know even if I stay here till you report out, so I'm just gonna guess and say a couple of things. I sent everybody, including the sheriff and the district attorney and the board, a letter on this and explaining some of my qualms about it and questions, and that you guys, we've had this discussion before, and I mentioned something last meeting about you guys not being quasi-judicial, and Supervisor Brown nicely sent me something on his opinion on why you are, and I will read to you real quick quasi-judicial, and this comes from Black's Law Dictionary. Quasi-judicial, a term applied to the action, discretion, etc. of public administration officers who are required to investigate facts or ascertain the existence of facts and draw conclusions from them as a basis for their official actions and to exercise discretion of a judicial nature. So that's kind of where you are now, or where you should be now. You've been given evidence that a county official who at the time this board appointed broke the law, admitted under oath. You've been given a court transcript where the elections officer, Shannon White, admitted to counterfeiting ballots and other things which are a violation of law. You were given a letter by attorney David Kenny on the subject. You were given the transcripts again. It is your position to act. There is a problem that there's a conflict of interest with your county council. It is true that Forenza Pini fired her first attorney. That is because Prentice Long and Epperson hired his former boss. And when that was found out, because her attorney got all wobbly and he finally admitted that Kelly Snowden had been his boss, he was fired. So yeah, those things happen. And so the half-truths don't serve the people, and they shouldn't be what you guys are running on.
Yes, Mike Ware complimented Shanna on following the law. It was on following the law. So those things do happen. And you guys need to be more careful about what your attorney is telling you. It is false that you do not get your money back when you sue people or in lawsuits. And I can show you the papers I was served with when this board sued me twice, when you asked for court fees and attorney costs. So I don't know if that's changed. I can show you the 2 lawsuits that Derek Cole, you guys served on us when you sued us to get court costs and lawyer fees. So you guys need to be running on correct information and not just because it was said out loud makes it true. And it's very important that you guys get this right because as I said in my letter to you, this ball is in your court. You can say it's someone else's. I gave you information from the State Attorney General's office saying that it's the primary responsibility of the district attorney to enforce state laws. And your appointed district attorney is not interested in doing that at this time. But it also states in that letter that it falls on you directly. So it would be great if you guys would get the correct information. You should use an attorney that doesn't have a conflict. And you guys need to get it right. And this is costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars for us in the county.
Your time is up.
I know. Nobody's here. And you guys, that's...
I've given you a few minutes.
I know, and
So-
thank you. But this is important. And you guys are going to go in to discuss something. I'd be more specific if I knew what you guys were actually talking about, because you're talking about something that doesn't exist anymore.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will go into closed session.